Fair enough. Yeah, that's how we, just as a fair warning, we are live. But yeah, usually what I'll do is like I'll have like a couple bullet points, and then Rocky and I go off on tangents and get into random stuff. So I'm not super beholden to structure.
Is he okay with his name being said?
Yeah, I mean I've said it live.
Oh, okay.
Multiple times.
Just making sure.
But yeah, funny story about him. When I met him in person when he came to New York, he was calling me Dark Knight for forever and a half. And then we go out drinking, and he just leans over, just like kind of in private. He goes, "Is it weird that I keep calling you that?" And I was like, "I mean, you're welcome to call me Trevor, but whatever suits your fancy." So now it's a mix of both, but it's usually Dark Knight for some reason. So
see, I at least separate my comic book name or my comic book channel from my YouTube name. So my name actually is Bill.
Yeah, I figured that the title was at least eponymous. Yeah, that'd be something else if you were just like Roger and you call yourself Professor Bill. But before I intro us in, we do have somebody hitting us with a live chat, just saying good evening and that he's looking forward to it. Thanks, Ed. So am I.
Ed Brewer, what's going on, dude?
All right, so I think without any further ado, we can get into this bad boy. Hey guys, welcome to the 48th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co-host in the comics community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics. Whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations, this hit it all. This week, I am joined by the U.S.'s foremost comic book educator, Professor Bill from Comic Book University. How are you, my man?
Doing pretty good. I'm in Canada, though.
Well, I know you're originally from Jersey, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
So I think it still applies. I mean, a majority of your audience is...
good. Bagel is also a Jersey girl, right? Aren't you? Yeah, you don't pump your own gas.
I forget about that sometimes, man. Whenever I'm driving through to like go to Six Flags or whatever, because I'm in Connecticut. So whenever I'm going to like Six Flags...
I thought you were in New York.
No, I go to New York a lot.
Oh, okay.
But
so we're all part of the tri-state.
Yes, we are. In fact. Jace Millam also joins us in the chat saying, because that's my name. I guess Dark Knight is my name.
DKN.
I've become that guy. Fun fact for those of you who are not early viewers, at the beginning, I did not say my name. My first couple episodes, I didn't even have my face on here.
Oh, dude, your what was it? Brian Edward Hill interview was so cringy because you thought your face was being shown. You're like, I've never shown my face, but your face wasn't shown. I'm just like, oh my God, please stop bringing it up. He doesn't realize.
I had no idea. It was so crazy. And it was so funny because the next time I interviewed him, the second one, his face wasn't on. So wow. Like, yeah, it did.
His face wasn't on with mine either.
Yeah, it literally took until our most recent one a couple weeks ago to finally have both of us on here. Fortunately, I look slightly less like a child, so I'll take it. We also have Aaron VO saying, hey, can't stay, stuck at work, but just want to say have a great stream. Thank you, man. We appreciate it. Good luck at work. Samoki Dude says, what's up, boys? What's going on, dude? Thank you for joining us.
Yo,
and
that's
Ed
a very
Brewer,
Canadian thing to say.
Ed Brewer also gives you your credit. You do educate the U.S., though.
I try. I try.
And Jace also says, congrats on your escape, Bill.
I escaped? Oh, right before the borders closed.
Yeah. Good call indeed. Well, let's get right on to this topic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And obviously, Bill, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you on. It's been so freaking long. Anytime. But as the thumbnail and whatnot indicates, tonight, Bill and I are going to be kind of discussing a little bit about the current state of the DC universe, but more so going over some changes we might want to see, what we think might need to be fixed. So before we can go into what might need to be fixed, I think it's definitely prudent to kind of discuss how we feel about the current DC universe. And Bill, I'm curious because I haven't had we didn't have any extensive conversation before this. How are you feeling about the current DC universe? And do you think it's in a position where it needs some serious changes or maybe some minor tweaks?
Yeah. Yeah, big time. The latter more than the former. It's, I don't know, it is what it is, but I feel like the DC universe should be in such a better position than it is right now. But I feel that it's just not. I don't know. Like with Marvel, it's so easy to put a finger on what's wrong. You know, some of the things that are wrong at Marvel. It's so easy to say, oh, well, they're doing this and they're doing that. But with DC, like I dropped the Flash comic book. which is crazy to me. And everybody's telling me now that no, Flash is really good right now. I just dropped it. Yeah, right. Well, I just dropped it like a month ago. So tell me how it suddenly got better. Well, a month worth of writing ago.
Gotcha.
Tell me how it got better inside of 4 months, because all I keep on saying, and I love Joshua Williamson. You know what I'm saying? Like the guy he tells some incredible stories, but lately just feels like he's stretching stories out. And how is it that Barry Allen, he's supposed to be the premier Flash, right? He doesn't know how to use his powers after all this time. How is that? It just doesn't make sense. You can't go backwards in time like that, even with a character like the Flash.
Yeah.
With Superman, I don't think that's something that everybody can put a finger on. You know, saying with the Batman is great right now. You know, saying let's go. But you know, for such a long time, we've just gotten so out of touch with the characters. And again, one of the biggest problems that we've got is, aside from the Justice League, whoever is going to be in the Justice League, I'm glad Cyborg's finally in the Justice League since the New 52. Who else do they have? You know, you got the Teen Titans, you know, which, you know, awesome. Adam Glass was doing a kick-ass job in that.
I agree.
But like, when's the last time we've seen Rocket Red? When's the last time we've seen Red Tornado? When's the last time that we've actually seen something besides the Orlando thing with Martian Manhunter?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When have we seen some of these amazing characters? Where's the Hawk and Dove? They're on the Teen Titans or the Titans TV show. How come there isn't a comic book of that? Where are all of my characters? How come every time DC makes a DC animated film, which everybody's like, oh, that's one thing DC does better than Marvel. They always do this, but cool. But with the exact same characters, it still gets tedious. It still gets annoying. I'm tired of seeing Superman and Batman. It's hard to say, but I'm tired of seeing the same movies and, you know, being redone. Can we get some other characters? That's what I think is wrong.
And kind of adding to that, I agree that I think that DC is not using their wealth of characters well at all, because I think that is, aside from the fact that I think their trinity is above all the greatest superheroes of all time, I do think that they have such an incredible library of fantastic characters that could use some modernizing. You know, that, like, we've seen what happens when you take great characters like that and you put them in the right hands and they suddenly become popular. But aside from that, Bill, to be honest, I also think that they've been mishandling the characters they have been writing largely over the course of their main line over the last, I would say, year and a half, 2 years, pretty poorly. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of debate back and forth between King's Batman, but it's evident that sales really started to drop off towards the end. I wasn't a fan of it. Bendis' Superman, like you said, is an easy one to point a finger at, and a critique that, you know, my normal cohort Comic Boom makes that I agree with is they have no idea what they want to do with Wonder Woman. You know, as like, whether or not you like the Azzarello era or the Rucka era, after Rucka left the book, it's clear that Wonder Woman's been pretty directionless. So that there's an issue there. And I think one of the big things that it comes down to is obviously editorial, and how they allow their big names to have their own fiefdoms of the DC universe that are all somehow impacting other fiefdoms, and it just gets confusing and messy. And I don't think they're paying attention to who they're allowing to be the architects of their universe. DC, to me, has always worked well when you have the person dealing with the big face, kind of face characters, big named events in that way. And then you might have a couple sectors that are less touched or untouched at all by those things, that are, you know, given the reins to like another really talented, trustworthy writer. And they're not doing that, you know. And I think especially after AT&T scooped up or started getting more involved into DC Comics, we've had a lot of issues there, because you can tell that they're not putting people in high-ranking publishing positions that are suitable for those jobs. And it certainly doesn't help as a fan kind of speculating over those things, because the comic book industry is just not transparent.
Yeah.
At all. So
we've seen, just getting into the comic book job with the Warren Ellis thing, that's not transparent, and that anything can happen. So yeah, it doubles over on itself.
Yeah, 100%. So if you were to poke through, you know, what you think are the core issues, I know you were speaking about not really using their library of characters. Are there any other things that you think just are in dire need of being fixed? Or is that kind of your big central premise?
Nah, dude. I think that it just needs a complete overhaul.
Mm.
All the respect in the world to Dan DiDio. I don't know. He was apparently a very controversial figure, while at the same time, people still said nice things about him. It's like, we disagreed, but we didn't hate each other. It wasn't quite a Jim Shooter thing where it's like, no, we agree with him, but we hate him. Saying,
Yeah.
personally, I love Jim Shooter. I never had to work for him though, so I'm biased. But
you interviewed him as well at one point, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
I still talk with him every so often by email. I don't want to bother him, but no, he's to me at least, he's good people. But I think that there's like Jim Lee is right now in charge of, what's his title right now?
He is co-publisher and chief creative officer.
Yeah, so they don't really have necessarily the same way that CB Cebulski does it, but yeah, it's a similar title. I'm sorry, what has this guy done?
Yeah.
What's this guy done? In the heart of a situation, and no disrespect to Jim Lee, one of the absolute greatest artists who's ever, existed, one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. You know what I'm saying? Find a better smile in comic books. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's because it's genuine. You know what I'm saying? He actually cares, and he's a good person. He does drawings for people, whatnot. But just because you're a good person doesn't mean you should be put in charge of things. And like, I feel like he might as well just take a nap at his desk, because like, what has he been doing lately? He's been doing commissions for charity to help out local comic books. That's really great. Is that really it? Is that as far as your skills go, is drawing? Then you don't belong in that position. And I think he knows that. Maybe he knows that, but like, a paycheck's a paycheck, right?
Yeah.
I think that we need something. So from the top down, saying Anthony Scaramucci, for a while, he was a Trump advisor for like 2 weeks. He made one of the greatest Italian, sayings public. The fish rots from the head down. You know what I'm saying? But it's not just the head. It's so much else. Where are the editors? What are the jobs of the editors right now? Why are some of the editors so out of touch with what people want, regular people want? Why are some of the editors not paying? Tevye is talking about Bendis right now, and all the love in the world to Bendis. I think he's one of the nicest, greatest people in the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Somebody who goes around adopting kids. I'm sorry, you have got to be a garbage person to insult this man directly, to make direct insults to this human being. Like, you have got to be one of the worst people on the face of the planet to directly attack somebody like that. You want to, like, he's saying, his Superman has been garbage. Okay, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I'm not apt to disagree on that. But, like the personal attacks, Bendis shouldn't have any personal attacks directed against this guy. This guy is just an amazing human being. But he's kind of got a free for all right now with Batman or with Superman, and nobody's telling him, wait a second, do you actually have a plan for tomorrow? You know what I'm saying? Scott Snyder, one of the greatest people out there also. He's like, this is a guy, if anybody had a chance of just bringing down the prices of comic books, it would be him, because he recognizes and he tries to give everybody, the bang for their buck. The problem is, by him doing that, he's jamming too much into the stories. Like his Justice League just had me going, dude, stop. I can't follow all of this. He needs an editor to come in and just, take him by the shoulder, pat him on the other shoulder and say, dude, I love you, but you know that comic books are still going to be around tomorrow, right? You can spread some of this stuff out. Meanwhile, I was just saying about Joshua Williamson, who's like, it's way too spread out. Give me some more stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all over the place. There's everywhere you go in there. There's just this stuff. Sometimes I feel like certain writers are hired because, and this is a much bigger problem in Marvel. The problem is DC then scoops these writers up. It's like with Marvel, they see somebody wrote a novel. Hey, you want to come over and write comic books? And they just don't translate well. You know what I'm saying? But then DC is just like, hey, you wrote for Marvel and you wrote novels. Come on over here. And it's like, dude, maybe litmus test them. Like, Tom King, who's going to argue about his Vision story? Who's going to argue maybe the final issue of Mr. Miracle? But like I was talking about, build up these smaller characters, right? Tom King is one of those people who's going to do that. Does he actually know how to stick an ending? Because I mean, if you've got this great story that the ending, you just kind of go, wait, what? You got to kind of wonder, like maybe go over his ending. He's good with everything. Go over his endings. You know, there's just so much going on, and you have to have people who will actually. My kid's playing with my cat through the glass window. There's just so much, happening, and some people need to come together and just say, okay, we see some problems. If I just named them, I can imagine what they can see over there.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Well, Bill, you said a couple of things that I definitely want to unpack, because I actually do agree with everything you said right there. DC's editorial has been in such a state of flux, and it's very clear that editors are not properly doing their jobs. An editor is not only supposed to make sure that the books are coming out on time. A part of their job is being conceptually available to help the writer distill their vision into the best possible thing it can be. Comic book editors in particular, and I'll give them credit for the fact that they have a tough job, but when they're not doing it at all, that's when we draw the line. Comic book editors have to fulfill many different tasks, being conceptual editors, being copy editors, making sure that word balloons are in the right spot. Art editors, right? Because comics are a visual medium. You need to make sure things are lining up. You need to make sure, I don't know, that Wally isn't under the Flash suit when Barry's the Flash. Who knows? But one of those things in comics in particular, because they're playing with properties owned by DC Comics, is knowing when to toe the line and to say no. Right. And it's a fundamentally difficult balance that I will admit to, right? Because you need to know when to give creator room, but you also need to know when to say no. And it's very clear that DC is saying no to all of the hungry writers that aren't huge names, and they're saying yes to everything from big creators. And you can't let it go like that. I know you want to sell books, and I know the reason you brought Bendis here was to sell books, but you're not doing it. So you would think that, especially as professionals, right? Because the fact that you and I are sitting here able to poke holes through a multi-billion-dollar business's publishing strategy, you would think that the professionals would be able to find those same issues at the bare minimum and readjust to some capacity.
Maybe they have. Maybe their hands are tied.
It's just, and I understand, man, the inner workings of not only the comic book industry are non-transparent, but obviously when you're owned by such a large parent company, things can be totally out of your hands. But I still can't help but think that as professionals, they would at least be able to make marginally better content than what they're doing right now. Their main line to me has been pretty weak over the last 2 years or so. And the only books that I generally look forward to reading are the Black Label books, because they have an actual editor on there, Mark Doyle, kick-ass editor, who knows what he's doing. He knows how to get talent on the right books. Out of all the Black Label books that I've read so far, which is most of them, there's honestly only one that I didn't really like that much. But if that's your batting average, you're doing pretty damn
Which
good.
one?
I really did not like Last Night on Earth.
Oh, I don't know that I didn't like it. I thought it was great conceptually. I just thought, it was a little bit too wild. There were some parts in there that just made me go, "Oh my God, mind blown."
Listen, hear me out, man. The first issue of Last Night on Earth was my favorite thing that I had read in 2019. I absolutely adored it. And then
that was Snyder, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Snyder Capullo. Yeah, the first issue to that series was one of my favorite things I read last year. And then it really fell apart for me. But even then, kudos to Mark Doyle if that's your batting average.
Doyle also doesn't have to worry about continuity in Black Label, though. But we want continuity. So, I'm willing to give credit where credit's due, but I'm also willing to, recognize where sometimes people are getting away with things. And, the other editors, when you've got so many writers saying, continuity makes it hard,
But yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the constraints of doing big two comics, especially. But I feel like if you're doing your job and you're hiring a good group of editors who obviously know how to collaborate and know how to just do the basic job of an editor, I feel like it certainly mitigates the difficulty. It, you know, like you get the right people on the job, like there are so many different cogs in the machine. And especially when you're trying to be concerned about continuity, quality, sales, I know it's difficult, but if it weren't difficult, everybody would be, you know, applying for the job. So that's where I kind of toe the line. I'm like, you know the beast, that you're dealing with. You kind of have to work around it. You know,
Maybe the pay just isn't good enough to make people want to go do that. Why do so many women become teachers over men? Because women are usually the primary caregivers, and the best job to have is a teacher when my kid is in school, I'm at work, and that's one of the best ways to do it. That's one of the reasons why it's a female dominated profession, because more women can apply for this. You have an overwhelming majority of women applying for teaching positions. It's not because the pay is great. I can assure you of that. The pay sucks for everything that we've got to do as teachers. Yeah. It sucks, but sometimes sometimes it's just your calling. Sometimes it's whatever. So I don't know. There could be a lot of factors in why the editors are in the situation that they're in. I don't know. It's manifold. And again, it is easy to poke holes that we imagine are the correct answer, but we don't know if that's the correct answer. We don't know how micromanaging they are at AT&T, Warner Brothers, the whole thing, with these companies constantly merging and selling off and breaking off and whatnot. Like, we don't know. Plus something that I would figure would be a benefit or a boon, but at the same time, it can also backfire, is the idea that people just don't have faith in the movies. And the movies are where the big money makers are, especially when you look at what Marvel has done, with their Rocket Red, the inspiration for Rocket Red, Iron Man, and all these other properties, these low tier properties that are all of a sudden A tier material now. You got to sit here and wonder, like, could they take Hawkman and make him A tier? Because they certainly did it with Shazam, which I mean, if you're an old Wiz Comics fan, an old Fawcett Comics fan, of course, this is a better character than Superman, time tested and proven, But when Lewis would punch my head right off for saying that, but like properties have shown, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. Like, we don't know what's necessarily going on behind the scenes, but we do know that people are putting people in charge for reasons other than sticking with continuity or paying proper homage to the source material, or just keeping the characters who they actually are. Henry Cavill would be a great Superman if he ever got the chance to play the role.
I agree.
But he hasn't. I haven't seen a Superman movie since the Richard Donner years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
where's Superman right now?
I will say though, and I mentioned this in the discussion with Lewis and Boom last week. I actually, as I get older, I appreciate Superman Returns more and more, to be honest with you. Like and I know, there's
getting stabbed in the spleen, or actually in the kidney, with a kryptonite knife, and then picking up an entire island or continent basically of kryptonite and flying in the sky because that's his greatest weakness. Yeah, great movie, but go ahead.
I don't know, man. I mean, I think that obviously they were trying to go for more along the lines of like resonating the themes of Superman, the struggle of Superman, and sure, yeah, maybe it kind of flew over what we as comic book fans and even normies, I would say, know about Superman's weakness to kryptonite. But I think the symbolism was there and it's strong enough. And I think there have been way more egregious choices made with Superman, even in particular. So I think the look that movie takes at Superman, and even how Brandon Routh plays him in that context, I thought, it's something that grows on me as I get older. And I think it's also because I become more cynical as I get older and I just want a Superman. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. I think the cynicism, not every day, but every time I think about that movie, just gets worse. Because when I first saw it, it was like, this wasn't a bad movie. You know what I'm saying? But I'm also used to, I just turned 45 2 days ago. So yeah, happy birthday. So you can tell I celebrate a lot, right? So like, I'm 45 years old, man. I've seen freaking Reb Brown as Captain America with the motorcycle helmet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen Chinese web Spider-Man. I've seen Turkish Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying? I've seen Spider-Man, smoking a cigarette in some of these foreign Spider-Man movies. Like I've seen some crap in my days. All right. I was a kid sitting in front of the TV watching 66 Spider-Man, on reruns, but nonetheless, it was regular in syndication. I'm just like, yeah, and surprise, surprise, when Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil took over and then God forbid when Frank Miller was finished with his Batman auditions in Daredevil, and he came over to Batman. It's like, oh my God. I remember being on the school bus in a school in New Mexico when all of a sudden, somebody's just like, dude, Batman Dark Knight Returns is the most crazy look at Batman you're ever going to see in your life. I'm like, bull. Came over and I read the book at his place. I'm like, oh my God, what have they done with Batman? And it was amazing, what I'm saying? But you could see the flow, and these are people who were excited to be in comic books, and you had people who actually cared all around the whole situation. Like these were people who cared about their craft, I every so often I go back and I see this picture. I forget who did the picture. There was not Ron Friends, because that would be silly. Not Ron Lim. Oh, for crying out loud. Mike Zeck. Mike Zeck drew a picture of the Hulk. Just the breakdown, just the pencil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had 4 different inkers on it. One was Bob Layton. Another one was Joe Rubenstein, who signed my Infinity Gauntlet, baby.
Oh, nice.
What do you call it? And you had 2 other art. I can't remember right now. Oh, I think one of them was Buscema. I can't remember. Anyway, there were 4 different people doing it, and you get to see the different ways that, like, here's the same pencil, but depending on the inker who's going to do the finishes, holy crap, look at how different the Hulk looks. Which one's your favorite Hulk? And it's like, I can't decide. Can I take them all? You know what I'm saying? Like, and you see this, and like it just gives you an insight into. So like I see things like this, and I'm like, I'm not qualified to say what these comic book companies need to do and not do, and things like this. But I'm still entitled to my opinions. So like I don't know. I just see so much wrong happening in DC when they've got these most recognizable characters. I'm gonna bring this back to wrestling if anybody's a wrestling fan. How do you have the most recognizable face probably in the world? Hulk Hogan. If Hulk Hogan's walking down the street, you're more likely to recognize him than Michael Jordan, who could be standing right next to him. You might not recognize Michael Jordan. Bet you're going to recognize Hulk Hogan. Guaranteed. You know what I'm saying? You're going to recognize him over any other sports or sports entertainment athlete walking down the street. The most recognizable look. Mr. T would probably be up there too, but he hasn't been in media for a while. So, it is what it is. How do you have WCW? Here's Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, like all these incredible wrestlers there. And WWE over here says, hey, let's take this Stone Cold guy. What's his face? WCW couldn't do anything with. And let's make him into somebody. Hey, here's this guy, The Rock, who's talking about jabronis and SmackDown hotels, and let's make him into one of the best talkers everywhere. Hey, here's Eddie Guerrero, who had a really good run over there, and all of a sudden, people love Eddie Guerrero more than anybody. You bring up Eddie Guerrero's name in wrestling, and people, have to hold back tears. How do you take some of these incredible people? The Undertaker, he was in WCW too. You know what I'm saying? How do you, when you don't have those great names, you take that originality. You take those things that you do have, and you just you put every single bit of creative juice in there. And you don't just necessarily throw things at the wall, but maybe you do. You do what you got to do, and whatever sticks, that's what you pump up. That's what you put your time and your money and your effort into. And with DC, I feel like that's the problem. We've got Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, and what else? What else?
Yeah.
What have you done with Green Lantern as of late? Because I remember seeing the Justice League movie in the theaters, and when all of a sudden, like, here's this movie where the first thing that we're shown is the CGI mustache Henry Cavill, and it's like, and I swear to God, almost to this day, I'm like, are you sure that was Superman? Because that didn't look like Superman. Was that somebody playing Superman? Like when I was in the movie theater, I'm just like, so who's this guy they got playing Superman? Like, why Why do they have a fake person playing Superman in a Justice League movie? Is this like is this a scene that they're trying to do in the movie? I didn't understand what I was seeing. I was so completely put off by that. But when I'm seeing, that Green Lantern ring, some, like some nameless Green Lantern flying around, punching people, and the ring flies off and, right past Steppenwolf, I'm just like,
Yeah.
and everybody in the theater, it's almost like, Captain America in the Infinity War movie picking up the hammer, and then you see it come back. It's like, people just like, oh, where was any single person who worked at DC and has any kind of decision-making abilities when that scene was playing on opening night in the theaters? I was there. How did they not see this and say, people want to see the Green Lantern, we need to put him out there right now? Why did they instead turn around and say, hey, Venditti, we're going to cancel your stuff?
Yeah.
He's writing Hawkman now.
Rough thing is, though, is that honestly, I think that Venditti's Green Lantern is like right up there with John's. I mean, John's did something that is more than difficult to match. Difficult is not the word that I would choicely use, but you know what I'm saying by that. But Venditti, to follow up that run with something as good as he did, Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern Corps, I would be willing to die on this hill that, especially at the beginning of Rebirth, was arguably the best book out, and it was the most consistent throughout the entire run. It was astoundingly good. And to follow up on a run like Jeff Johns and to be able to do something like that is astounding. And you make a great point.
But Venditti's done that twice.
Hawkman.
Exactly. Because here's Jeff Johns' Hawkman, which is oftentimes considered, I will also say, this is the best run on Hawkman ever, but it's also only like 16 issues.
Yeah,
I think Venditti's on 25, and it's amazing.
I think also one of the things that differentiates as well as the proximity, you know what I mean? Because we haven't had like we haven't had a good Hawkman book prior to Venditti in who knows how long. Because I know we had
since Johns.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was
maybe we need to get Venditti on Aquaman just to be absolutely certain.
I mean, that's true. That's true. Maybe
throw him on Booster Gold just to make sure.
You ever play like Mario Kart with your kids, and you know how like if you start riding behind them, you just really start to pick up steam if you're like racing behind somebody? That's Venditti, but only with Johns.
I guess. I don't know. I haven't been reading his Justice League.
I mean, the rough thing about his Justice League is you can tell that it's filler, and I know he had said that he was leaving Justice League for a dream project. So you can even tell by reading it that the severity and the stakes of everything kind of start to belittle, unfortunately. This is also me hoping and praying that that dream project might be Superman, because I think he'd be a great Superman writer. But
what is my hair doing?
But going on what you were saying is that, DC has talent. Like DC does have the talent to put out great books. They're just not putting them in the right spots. And it's something that it took me a little while to kind of come to. Boom and I did kind of sister episodes drafting Marvel creators to DC and then vice versa. And that's what made me realize how good the talent is at DC, but how the editors are just not putting the right people on the right books. And it, again, DC right now just comes down to editorial, man. And like you said, there are likely things over our heads, over their heads that we don't know about. But for what we can look at face value, editors are still not doing their jobs. And I think that what makes it easier to lay stake to that claim is that even the books that aren't super popular IPs don't have great quality, for the most part. Like those editors, for the most part, also aren't helping the writers with their conceptual editing. They're not trying to distill the project. And one of the things that also kind of leads me to think that is, based on my last conversation with Brian Hill, he had mentioned he's never had like extensive conversation with any of his comic book editors when he was at DC at all. And that's kind of sad. I think that's really sad. Like, to me, I feel like an editor should be right there. They should be on your shoulder, again, helping you to distill the work into the best possible thing it can be. And the fact that maybe that they're not doing it, or maybe the industry or their company in particular is not putting them in a position to do so, that's a huge problem, because a good editor can turn a bad project into something readable. Like, I've seen that countless times, man. Like I started studying within the last couple of years, I switched my degree from molecular biology into something more creatively based. And I've seen students who had started out even on the graduate school level, who started out with horrible projects. But because our professor was going through all of our work as if he were an editor, he distilled it into something that was readable, that at launch was not anything that I would ever want to put my eyes on. So it goes to show you how important that role is that DC isn't taking seriously. And I've been leaving this up because I definitely want to bring up Jace's comment here. He wants to know if he thinks that this is always the way with comics and that quality is cyclical and sometimes we can't see how well things work until we have hindsight. Yeah, of course. Ironically, that was actually the wrong comment I wanted to put up. This was the one I wanted to put up. He wants to know if and this was a couple minutes ago, so I don't quite know what this is, but he wants to know if he thinks it's a systemic problem with the medium. Bill, do you think it's a medium issue?
Nah. My conversations with Shooter were one of the things that he said, and this isn't in the interview, it's actually in a panel that I covered with him and DiCarlo, the guy who drew the death of Jason Todd. He did the the inks for Death of Jason Todd. With movies, you have, I'm going to do the exact thing that he did. Yeah. You have Superman, let's say, standing like this, and then he's going to sit down. Now, with comic books, you can have the panel where he's standing up and where he's sitting down. But with movies, you also have this. Mm-hmm. You get it?
Yep.
You have the good and the bad. With comic books, you have the opportunity to put only your best foot forward every single time. You know, this I've been in martial arts since I was 8 years old. So every so often, I'm going to always refer back to some form of fighting art. Superfoot Bill Wallace, the greatest. Like he didn't fight for points. Chuck Norris was a points fighter. That's cute. You know what I'm saying? It's like, pow, point for the head. Yeah, but that was a weak point. Whatever. It's like he got famous because he was a point fighter. You know, he's strong, but could he really follow through? Could he take a shot? Who knows? Superfoot Wallace went full contact with people, and he didn't have the ability to use his right leg. He could almost never use his right leg. What's up, Silva? He couldn't use his right leg because of a jiu-jitsu problem that he did. He wound up twisting the muscles on his legs, and back in the day, they only had exploratory surgery. They didn't have microscopic, so it actually wound up endoscopic. So they're like, can't do anything with your leg. So he could only use it for balancing himself. He only used his left leg for kicking. And he was called Superfoot because you couldn't break his defense. You couldn't get close to him in a kickboxing match. You simply couldn't do it. No one's done it since. You know what I'm saying? And he went 23-0-0. Wow. I mean, that's Bill Superfoot Wallace. The guy, watch his matches and it's inspirational. And all he would ever do is left hand, because he would fight sideways. He can't let you get his right leg because it would hurt. He would kick all these, like especially three kicks, but whatever. He kept it so simple. It was almost like Jeet Kune Do. You keep it simple. You just follow these basic premises, and then boom, you get to go forward. You get to do these amazing things. Here's something that Chris Claremont said, and about Jim Shooter. I don't think that Claremont dislikes Shooter. I just don't think he's also his best friend. But like, Shooter's done a lot for Claremont, and that should always be recognized. He got him out of lawsuit trouble when he tried to use a Red Sonja license without the license. So, hey, what's up, Joe? So how familiar are you with the Dark Phoenix saga?
Fairly.
Okay. Do you remember the part where she ate the planet?
Yeah.
She consumed an entire planet with life on it. She kind of pulled a Galactus, right?
Yep.
Claremont was really upset with Shooter because Shooter said, okay, there's got to be consequences for that. There have to be consequences. You can't just destroy an entire planet.
Right.
And it's apparently in the Shi'ar system too. This is one of the most powerful races out there.
Yeah,
There's
no,
got
that
to be
don't fly.
consequences.
Yeah.
So Claremont wasn't happy with that, but these are stories that are still built on today. The idea that the Phoenix is the most dangerous thing. If something with the Phoenix happens, all of a sudden, dude, that is world ending. That is potentially universe ending. This is when the Shi'ar and everybody else get involved because, dude, we can't just trust you, Earth, to handle things. So what do we do? What do we do, Earth? What do we do? And then suddenly more properties came in and started talking about this. Like, dude, you know what I'm saying? Let's pay attention to the fact that there have to be consequences for certain actions. This is the thing that Claremont, the writer, did not like. That Shooter told him, you have to. He impugned this on him. You have to do something about this. There has to be consequences. Shooter was hated by people because he wasn't a people person, apparently. Me personally, I have a thick skin. I was in the military. You cannot insult me the way that my drill sergeants have insulted me. So it's always going to be like, that was cute. Let me tell you how you could build on that insult. You know what I'm saying? Like really dig it in. No. So I'm okay with people, like whatever he would say to people. I don't know what he would say, but like if you're going to have an editor in chief, you need somebody who will fight for you, but you also need somebody who's not going to take your crap, who's going to tell you when you're wrong and will stand by his guns and say, you need to change or add something. But they also have to be really good at what they do, And I mean, Jim Shooter, here's a guy who wrote his first comic book when he was 12 years old and it was published. I mean, that says something to me. That says maybe he was 14, whatever it was. That says something to me. You know what I'm saying? You find talent where you are. I feel like so many, I know you're saying there's talent out there and they're not put in the right places. That could be the case. I know that's absolutely the case with Tom King. Tom King should not be given Batman. He should be given, I don't know, give him Booster Gold. Give him Booster Gold. You know what I'm saying?
Blue Beetle?
Yeah, give him Blue Beetle. That's actually the name I was looking for. So I just took his best friend. You know what I'm saying? Give him something like that. Give him these low tier. Give him Aztec. All right? Stop screwing around. Here's this guy who likes philosophy and looking into different religions and whatnot. Give this guy Aztec. You know, say give this guy, say, listen, who do you want to write? Don't say Batman or Superman. You know what I'm saying? Who do you want to write? Take some of these low tier guys. Have him write Guy Gardner. You know what I'm saying? Make Guy great again. You know what I'm saying?
That's such a good slogan.
Right? Let's do this. But I feel like so much of what we have, G. Willow Wilson was put on Wonder Woman. And to her massive credit, she said after she was finished, I wasn't right for Wonder Woman. Does anybody disagree that do you disagree with me that Gail Simone was incredible with Wonder Woman?
I don't disagree.
Okay. I met her at a Comic-Con down here, and I got to sit down and hang out with her and talk with her and things like that. And she loves to talk, and I love that she loves to talk because I get to be involved in these stories that are just like amazing. Gail told me at one point, she's like, with my Wonder Woman, I was so wrong for Wonder Woman at first. I'm like, why? She says, because I was using my voice. And I didn't, and I was talking about the things I wanted to talk about. It's not that I was trying to use an agenda. It's just I put myself in Wonder Woman's shoes or I put Wonder Woman in my shoes as opposed to putting myself in Wonder Woman's shoes. What would Wonder Woman do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And once I found Wonder Woman's voice, suddenly, and like that's what I'm talking about. And I feel like if G. Willow Wilson was more into it, and if she was given more time, she could have done that also. I believe that anybody, for the most part, could put Rocky on freaking Wonder Woman. You know what I'm saying? If he's got time, from all the work he does.
I think with what also true. I think with what you're saying, though, a big part of that is editorial, because from what I've heard, both from sources inside and out of DC, is that especially with the Wonder Woman book, they're really not allowing anybody to be moving and shaking and impacting anything huge, partly because of death metal, but because of whatever other things that higher ups and editorial want them to do. And that's a big issue. Like even Stephen Orlando, who I'm not super fond of, has gone on record saying that, saying that he wasn't even fond of his own Wonder Woman run because they didn't let him do anything. And I think that's a huge issue with G. Willow Wilson, because She is incredibly talented. But again, like you were saying, it is a huge testament that she was able to admit that, because one of my biggest pet peeves about the comic book industry is that it feels like everybody strokes all their friends' egos. And the fact that she was able to lay it down and say, I'm not proud of this work, I give her so much credit. And whenever I get a creator that says that, it goes to show you a number of things about them. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of these big creators are starting to not put out great content is because they lack that sort of paranoia and that kind of self-awareness that a creator needs to keep themselves driven. Like I have this thing that I've been saying about Snyder a lot recently. And I think the thing that made him great was that he was so paranoid at the beginning of his career about never being able to do any of this ever again. And I'm not going to say that I wish he was in a paranoid place, because he's a great guy, great
Live each day like it's your last, right?
Yeah. And but and like I said, I'm not willing to sacrifice his happiness in order to get comics that I think are good. But I think it has shown that as he's become more comfortable in his position, that I think there's been a pretty decreasing quality of his work as in the last couple of years.
I don't know that he's gotten comfortable in his position. I think it's more like he's just trying to give us as much bang for his buck. So he's obviously got a billion ideas. This guy's not running out of ideas anytime soon, but he just jams so much of it in because he's like, I want to give them as many wow factors as I can in a comic book. And he doesn't understand it. Just let it breathe. The entire song can't be the guitar solo. You know what I'm saying?
I also think that both of those things are true. I definitely think that both of those things are true, because at the end of the day, and it could just be because I'm that guy that likes to pick everything apart and sound pretentious about comic books. But I also think that by forcing too much in there and ultimately ending up with a more lackluster story, you are steadily decreasing the value of the dollars that I've invested in those issues. Yeah. At that point, I would rather spend slightly more money and get a more fleshed out story. And I feel like most comic book readers feel that way. I don't think it's just me. And so there's also a part of it that I think other projects that he's done, like the Batman Who Laughs miniseries, like they added on a whole nother issue. It didn't need it. It did not need a 7th issue. And I think that's also, what really pushes me towards the argument that I think he's just not dotting his T's and crossing his I's anymore. Other way around.
Yeah, I know. Maybe that's exactly what he's doing, and that's the problem. No, with me, see, look at it this way. What if he originally wrote it for 7 issues, but he was told, no, 6, because that's what goes into trade paperback. And then they were like, ooh, people really like this first issue. You know what? We'll give you the extra issue. So he got it back.
I just can't help but think that, especially with DC's tendencies to just make everything longer, that it wasn't already in the back of their minds. I don't, especially with Scott Snyder, who sells books, now has immense clout in the industry. I just don't think personally that that's a move that they would try to make, trying to force Snyder into 6 issues when they could make 7, get more out of the 7 issues worth of money, probably upcharge on, actually not even probably, they definitely upcharge on the trade for the extra content. To DC financially, that's like a quadruple win. So, and again, I just honestly don't think Snyder has written anything that has been strong from start to finish almost since the end of his Batman run, personally. And I love the guy. I do. And like you said, with Bendis, I couldn't say a bad thing about the guy as a person. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met, not just comics creators, but there's a lack of thoroughness in the storytelling. And there's a lot of sacrificing of the craft, maybe to fill up the pages with as much content as possible, or maybe just to kind of pursue things that I don't know, might be a little bit more spectacle over storytelling, which is one of my biggest issues with Snyder. But either way, I think it's definitely a product of him just not being, hungry anymore. He's not hungry to make his mark. And I think that it's something that every artist needs to maintain to some capacity in order to continue putting out great content, and tying back to Wilson, I think that's what makes her so great, is that she has that self-awareness. She doesn't even need to do comics, dude. Like, she's an astounding novelist. She's won numerous high-profile awards. She doesn't need to do comics, but she comes back, she puts her best foot forward, and I would say at least 8 out of 10 times does a pretty great job. So that's, I think, also one of the big issues about DC is that they're enabling these big time creators and giving them so much slack that there's nothing chomping, at the end of the chain there, So, and again, the issues could be innumerable. There are probably things we're not looking at. There are probably things we don't even understand. But from the ground up, it definitely seems like this is one of the biggest contributing factors there. But we've kind of gone, unless you have anything more to say about, what we think DC is deficient at.
I think that with DC, much like my PC. Hey, what's up, Lewis? Much like I talked about you earlier and how you would want to punch my head off, Lewis. Go back and check that out.
You missed that part.
Yes, he did. It's a good thing. That means he's going to miss me. What do you call it? Anyway, I have a PC. That's what I'm talking to you on. We're kind of the beta testers, right? For a PC. They put out some kind of an update where they're going to take whatever information they want from us, to sell it to whoever they want. And they're also going to try and make whatever updates to try and, upsell their own products because they are a monopoly. And then they're going to, and they don't have a smaller testing audience, a beta testing audience to do that with. They have an alpha test, where they just do it amongst themselves. But then they turn around and they put the stuff out for us, and we are the paid beta testers. Oh no, they don't pay us. We pay them to be beta testers, which is, it's just dirty. It's the reason why we've got updates every week from these guys, because they're fixing what they screwed up last time, and it's just, and we pay the price for that. Or suddenly our computer slows down. It's just, it is what it is. I feel it's very similar with DC and their hiring practices. A lot of times, sometimes, they'll put out, like what happened? They just did, this was like 2 years ago. They did the writer's school, and they did the artist school. Snyder was actually in charge. He was the teacher for the writer's school. And there are a bunch of people who came together. They got like 4 or more, for maybe 6, whatever, writers come together and do something. And then they actually published that book. Everybody had their own short story. So let me get this straight. You had a class where people paid to be in this class. And then you have them write things, and maybe they get paid back for this. I don't know if they get royalties for this, whatever, but then you charged us to read that stuff. And I feel that so much of the comic book industry, including DC, well, the main two, the big two, they definitely do that. I feel like, why are you doing things like this? Why? And if you don't follow them, if you don't look at some of the things that they do, if you don't actually look at, the behind the scenes of what's going on, well, not the behind the scenes, but like the stuff they put out on Twitter and, those extra, the DC YouTube page and stuff like that, you don't know that that's actually what's being put out to you. So here's this brand new writer, or sometimes a brand new writer, Mags Visagio is on there, who is not a brand new writer. But here's this beta test that you're putting out, and you're charging us for it. How does that make sense exactly? Whatever happened to the idea of here's a room where we're going to train you? All right. Nobody's going to hear from you for the most part. You're an intern. You want to be a writer? Cool. Do this, do that. Go fax these things. Blah 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 blah. Here's the last 2 hours of the day. I want you to go ahead and if you want to be an artist, go ahead and do the finishes on this. Let me see how you do. And if you suck at it, whatever, it's going to go in the garbage anyway. I just want to see what you do. I want to try and give you some updates, and some advice on what you can do. Hey, you want to be a writer or whatever, go ahead and write me this short story, such and such. I'll take a look at it. Do you know what I would be willing to do to get some of my comic book scripts looked at by people? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm embarrassed to ask anybody, but I mean, if I had like some of these big names who'd be willing to, take a look at my comic book script, like, whoa, that'd be great. That's invaluable. Why isn't Marvel, and since we're talking about DC, why isn't DC doing that? How come we're getting these new, for the most part, new writers, new comic book writers for sure? Boom, here you go. Pay us for the stuff. Well, you're just diminishing the quality and the value of your name by doing that.
I mean, there are so many issues that I think comics have right now with who they are deciding to put in what positions. It's become, and I mean, all sort of companies can get political in some ways at times, but it's almost a political game. You know, like you have to do this thing to get here, and especially because it's such a creative medium, you would think that it would be, do you show promise in this area? Can you do this? I feel like that should be the ultimate kind of metric by which you decide whether or not somebody gets a shot to do something. And, you know, I think that there are probably numerous suggestions that we could make about putting up and comers in a position to do the most with what they have and to learn and to eventually give fans great content. And I honestly don't really have an idea as to how to do that myself, but you make some really good points there, in that it's become so much more about the immediate dollar than it has about building the brand, building fans, building the readership so that you could make, I think, more money later. And I know that comics are obviously filled with gimmicks to make a dollar on the spot, but the big issue is that they're not going with what is proven. And it's just that you put great people on a book, people recognize that it's good over time, and they will buy it on the back end. Although you might not get crazy money on the front, you're going to get it later. Al Ewing started writing a Hulk book that outsold Batman. Batman. Why? Because it was excellent and because people talked about it. So yeah, I feel like you can satisfy the business mentality that comes with running a company while also making good art. It's proven. It happened with Sandman. Who knew? Like, Neil Gaiman was playing with all of this obscurity, creating his own mythos. A couple years later, it's outselling Superman and Batman. That's insane.
He did start on Swamp Thing, right?
Gaiman
started on Swamp Thing, didn't he?
No. Gaiman wrote something called The Black Orchid for Vertigo. That was the first thing to get published. Mm-hmm. And then he did Sandman almost immediately.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't.
I thought he was on, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know why I thought he was on.
You might be thinking of Alan Moore?
Well, I guess they're both English, but I know that Moore was on the book also, and that was where he really got,
Yeah, I mean, and you look at what happened, and it's funny. I know I briefly brought up my Karen Berger shirt before, but the thing that makes Karen Berger such a great editor is that she knew things weren't working. So what did she do? She went overseas, found arguably the most concentrated batch of talent that the comic book industry had ever seen. Dude, in one go, Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Garth Ennis. Well, Warren Ellis is debatable right now, but he was a part of that.
He's Garth Ennis, absolutely.
Grant Morrison.
Warren Ellis. Sorry. Yeah, Warren Ellis. You can't take away what he's done. You can't say he's done one bad thing, therefore he sucks at writing. No, he's great at writing. Yeah,
I agree with you. I'm missing another. Oh, Mark Millar. In terms of artists, we get Brian Bolland. I mean, that's enough. Brian freaking Bolland, amongst many others that I can't name. But what happened? They went out there. She put them on books. She actually performed as a conceptual editor, right? She said no to Neil Gaiman and helped to distill him into arguably what is one of the greatest fantasy epics of all time, hard stop, amongst any medium. I don't care what anybody says. My skin that's been taken over says so. And it eventually led to money. Sandman volumes are still some of the highest selling trade paperbacks consistently. And it's about to boom because they're coming out with a freaking audiobook. It's so good. They got, excuse my French, James fucking McAvoy to voice Morpheus in an audiobook. Like, they've reaped so many benefits by prioritizing the quality of the content that is just translated into so much money. And the fact that they can't look back at that and see that longevity now and see that money now and see that that's the way to do it, to satisfy both ends. You can literally have your motherfucking cake and eat it too, and they're not. And that's frustrating. It's so frustrating as a fan, as somebody who aspires to be in the medium, as somebody who just sits on the internet and talks about it all the time. It's frustrating, man. And I know I got kind of passionate about it, but boy, you would think that they would look at their mistakes, learn from them, look from their successes, learn from them, but they're not. And it's indicated by the fact that, you know, the first plan for DC 5G was, I might be wrong in the point. I think it was all new, all different Marvel. Like the DC 5G, the early announcements for that sounded almost exactly like all new, all different Marvel. Guess what didn't work for Marvel? All new, all different Marvel. You're not only not learning from your mistakes, you're not learning from the competition's mistakes. So what does that tell you? And Paul Baker, since we were on the topic of Snyder before, says that he doesn't know how else to phrase it, but he feels like halfway through Metal, Snyder got it in his head that he's the new Kirby. And that's the sense that he's gotten from every single one of his books ever since Metal started. I think that I don't 100% agree with you. I don't think Snyder has the ego to think himself the new Kirby. I do think that Snyder feels that what he's doing now is somehow suddenly in his toolbox, even though it's not. I don't, I think that because it's selling and because of the awkward metric and how the comic book industry capitalizes on the fear of missing out, it is selling, and he thinks that the quality of the work is what people want, which some people do. It's not me, but some people do. I think it's given him the confidence to do what he wants to do rather than, again, crossing his T's, dotting his I's. I don't know, Bill. What do you think of that assessment?
To even say to think that he's the new Kirby. Kirby was an artist. He wasn't a writer. He was a storyteller, and he did do some writing. Saying he did like the Eternals and he did the New Gods and whatnot. But he was more of a storyteller than he was a writer. As far as his actual writing, he couldn't get across some of the concepts that he really wanted to. And I think that's evident. Yeah. The idea of like Darkseid and the New Gods was amazing, but it wasn't realized until people started looking at what he was doing, talking to him, reading some of his notes and things like that. And they're like, oh, well, hey, I can make that happen. Yeah. It's like understanding what Darkseid is. Oh God, here we go with the Tom King thing. But understanding what he actually is, Kirby could never get that across. He was completely incapable of getting that across. It wasn't until others came along afterwards and they solidified, not changing anything that Kirby's done, but driving it home. That's when all of a sudden we were like, holy crap, Darkseid is amazing. Kirby was, like he took whatever he had to do. He had an editor who's like, oh yeah, show Darkseid for the first time in Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal. Like, what? with a biker gang? What? Say like that just doesn't make sense. And then even when, the first time that we see Darkseid back in the past in the New Gods book, what was that, issue 8, where, like in the past where the first appearance of Steppenwolf, he's like, yeah, uncle, go get him. I'm like, what is this Darkseid? Oh my God, if I was reading this one the first time, I would have hated Darkseid. I thought he was a little punk, saying it's going back and seeing like, how did this become? And then really looking at how he became good. It wasn't Kirby at all. You know what I'm saying? It was his concepts that were realized by other people, Morrison. Yeah, Morrison has more to do with Darkseid's success and the fear that we have of Darkseid than Kirby ever had, even though Morrison changed nothing. He simply emphasized it better. He articulated it. There's the word I'm looking for. He articulated it better.
Yeah. Yeah, Grant Morrison definitely distilled Jack Kirby's vision into something that was far more effective at what it set out to do. You make a very good point there, as I think he did with a lot of kind of older comic book content. We also have, of course, my normal partner in crime, Comic Boom, just joining us. I agree. I guess he agrees with Paul there. So, Paul, you're not alone, my friend. Let's see. Ed Brewer, am I saying that Snyder's resting on his laurels? I don't think Snyder is kind of consciously saying, oh, I've done this thing, I can just put out bad content. I think Snyder genuinely believes that he's writing to the best of his ability, but I think that he's lost the kind of hungry instinct that comes with being a writer who feels like their time is more limited than it is, right? Like, to me, I don't know. I feel like there are obviously innumerable talented, high-profile creatives in any space of entertainment that continue to do great work that don't necessarily need to. But to me, I definitely get the feeling that Snyder has, again, kind of lacked the paranoia to go back and double check the work and to clean it up and to make it as concise and as effective as it possibly can be. I had a lot of issues in the craft of the storytelling in Dark Knight's Death Metal. There were a lot of things that as an amateur writer, I could point out and say, well, like, I don't need you to waste entire pages for characters to explain all of this stuff to me. Comics are a visual medium. Take advantage of that. I don't like that, you know, all of this interesting stuff, all the stuff that to me felt more interesting happened outside of the page, right? Like all of the stuff that happens between his Justice League run and this, so far, he has done an effective job at making that feel more interesting than what is actually going on. And there are things like that where I feel like as a writer, he's not effectively engaging himself in the craft. He's not checking himself. And I feel like he's just kind of doing, and I think it's a product of comfort, not necessarily that he's resting on his laurels. I don't know, Bill, how do you feel about my assessment or you know, how I feel about that?
Going the exact opposite way. I'm actually going with what you originally said about him when he first started, that he felt like every day was his last. With his Dark Knight's Metal was a little, I think he was trying to go a little bit too big. You know, when he made the freaking Mechazord Voltron thing in that first issue, I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? You know, he ran into the same trope that so many lesser writers do. I'm not naming any names, where they take a character like Mogul, you know what I'm saying? Mongol, Mogul, right? I always mess up that name.
Mongol, you got it, Mongol.
Mongol, it was Mongol. Well, that was the second time I said Mongol. That's a Jim Starlin creation. You know what I'm saying? That was actually, when I talked to him, he was like, yeah, all I did was I copied Darkseid. You know what I'm saying? It was like, exactly like you did with Thanos. He's like, yeah, exactly. But this was actually for DC. So how do I copy? He's like, okay, I get it. But like, it's a character that we love. You know what I'm saying? But you just took this unbelievably powerful character and you made it so that it's like he just got chumped because you wanted to do a Megazord thing. Yeah. And then you didn't even have the conclusion to it. You just like, you know, we're a Megazord, and all of a sudden it's ended. It's like, what is going on here? But you know, like his every day is his last thing. Oh, and then Batmandium was literally the shark jumping moment. That's Fonzie just like, you know what? Last time I jumped a shark, this time I'm jumping Leviathan. Woo! Like that was just the word. Like, are you kidding me right now? But with like his Justice League book, if you instead of read the book straight through and you just simply start going through and start picking out all the amazing points that happened in this, you look at the idea that the world was turned into a White Lantern again. You know what I'm saying? You look at the idea of like the Flash car and
Justice League.
Yeah, the Flash car was driven by Green Lantern Mosaic.
John Stewart.
Thank you, John Stewart. I'm like, Johns. It's not Johns. It's just John. Anyway, I'm so bad with names. I'm terrible with names. What do you call it? You know, like he's driven like all these incredible concepts that he did. If he were to take these individual concepts, he could make, I would say, being fair, 40 events from these concepts that he was doing throughout this, 42? How long was his run? 44 issues of Justice League?
Are we including annuals?
No, well, forget annuals. Forget Justice League No Justice.
39, just the Justice League run, the liberated run.
You think about that. All these events that could have been pulled out of here, right?
I agree.
He really brought it back to one of the most popular mediums, the Justice League TV show, which as a Hawkman, Hawkwoman fan, I wasn't a fan of Hawkgirl being with Jon Stewart, you know what I'm saying? But you know what it is. He was bringing it back towards those days, you know? I could see what he was, instead of being with him, he was with Martian Manhunter instead. So like he was trying to get that feel, that cartoon again, you know? He was doing some amazing work. The problem is he just crushed it all together. If he would have had 100, maybe even 150 issue run, and instead of adding stuff, he just simply told those 39 issues in a story over 100 issue run. Oh my God. Nobody would argue that was one of the best Justice League runs ever.
conceptually, man, Scott Snyder's swinging for the fences. I agree. One of the biggest issues is that he's not fleshing out all of these things.
Yeah.
And this is where I give him the critique of spectacle over storytelling, because it's like boom, 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 boom. It's just like immediate explosions, right? You're not allowing things to dissipate. You're not allowing the build up properly. Although the ideas are great, but it's like, you can put a V12 engine on anything. Is it going to work on a bicycle? Not well at all. Does the V12 engine look cool? Would it, if put into the right vehicle, be phenomenal? Absolutely. Is it going to work on a bicycle? I'd like to think not, with my basic understanding of physics. So yeah, and Paul, he wants to know if you could salvage Perpetua or the World Forger or the Dark Multiverse. I think you could. I think the World Forger was one of the best ideas that Scott Snyder's had in his entire DC cosmic run. I love the idea. I think it could definitely be used. Although one thing I am afraid of regarding your specific use of the word salvaged is that I really do think that Snyder is going to run a lot of these things into the ground to the point where it's going to become work if they ever want to be reutilized again. I don't know. What do you think about that, though?
Yeah, sometimes you just let it rest and let somebody else pick up the reins. Like we just talked about Kirby, and Darkseid, and the Eternals. Like the Eternals are only even partially cool because Gaiman, we were just talking about him, jumped on and he did. And it's like, oh, well, it's actually pretty cool. I get it. Icarus is it? Okay, I get it now. Saying so. It is what it is, and then the movie's going to be based off. And a lot of people are like, the Eternals, who's the Eternals? Because the most we know about the Eternals is the Jack Kirby run, which, with all due respect, as much potential was in there, it sucked. It sucked. Yeah. There was so much in there that just wasn't put together. It wasn't enunciated. You know what I'm saying? It's like you were speaking another language, and it's like, this could be the greatest book ever, but I didn't understand what was happening in it.
Absolutely.
So the movie could wind up like, there's so much potential for that movie to be made that forget about this. I believe this is going to be one of the best Marvel movies that the MCU has ever put out. That I'm saying, like, just that's just my opinion. That Feige's just going to knock it out of the park with this one, and people think it's going to be the worst.
Dude, I'm stoked.
Yeah. I think this is going to be one of the best. But all that being said, I was just now remembering that I think it was the last time that we did a video together. I talked about how Snyder did something amazing by breaking the
source wall.
The
source wall.
Oh, thank you. I was like, did you say the fourth wall? No, that's the fourth. It's the fourth world. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, the source wall. Why? That's the thing. It's like nobody's ever done that before. Not really. Not really. So maybe you shouldn't be the person to do it. Maybe nobody should do it. Maybe it's not, Snyder's not the guy to do it. No, maybe nobody should do it. Maybe there's some things that are best left not understood. You think about J.K. Rowling. Who's going to argue with me that those books, those Harry Potter books, are some of the best books in the world? Here's the thing about it. That's not a hard world. That's a soft world. Not a lot is explained in there. So much is left up to our imagination. The thing with Grindelwald that we found out about, did you ever read the Harry Potter books?
Oh, I read the shit out of those, yeah.
Okay, so you know that when all of a sudden they started talking about Grindelwald and Dumbledore's relationship, did you ever think that Grindelwald and Dumbledore were gay?
No.
It never crossed my mind that they were gay. I could care less if they're gay. If you want to make them gay in the book. Show me that they're gay in the book so I could be like, oh, that's interesting. As opposed to just, no, what are you talking about? So when all of a sudden in a freaking tweet, J.K. Rowling decides to say, I've always imagined that they were gay. What? Wait, what? What? And all these other things that she turns around and she tries to explain. Stop explaining what you never explained before, because nobody new is reading these books for the most part. Those of us who have read the book have read the book. All right. The books have been read. Maybe we're showing it to our kids, and it's going to be our explanations, not yours. You did your job. Now it's time to sit back and just let us do what we're doing. But you created a soft world where not a lot was explained, where most of it was left to our imagination, which is not bad writing at all. It's good writing. It's
Right.
when you try to explain this stuff afterwards where you wreck everything. And we have to be like, I need to just unfollow J.K. Rowling. I don't need to see what she's saying, because she's ruining things for me, for my wife, for everybody who's read this stuff. It's ruining it for us. And
there's a skill in storytelling, just adding on to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's just as much. It shows just as much promise to know when to omit information as it is to know what you should be giving the reader. So 100%, I totally agree. It's sloppy going back and trying to make
going back afterwards. Ray Bradbury was so detailed in what he did. He would explain the math, math of matter and energy, the difference between matter and energy, like particles going through the universe. Like, holy crap, he left nothing unexplained. You know what I'm saying? The first actual scientist to ever write science fiction was Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune. God, I can't wait for that movie to come out. Those first 3 Dune books were like, they were amazing. You know what I'm saying? There's so much there. You know what I'm saying? You can do hard systems. You can also do soft systems. But when you start doing something, you have to decide how you do, and you can't fix things after the fact. So no, Snyder did what he did. Maybe it's better off just leaving it. And if somebody else comes along and says, when I read that, something that I would change, let that happen instead.
Yeah, I mean, well, I agree, generally speaking. But I do think that even what he started building, the idea of Perpetua and the children of Perpetua, it could have gone somewhere, but the payoff just wasn't there. Those things were not elaborated on, but they weren't developed in a way that convinced me as a reader that these things are as epic as you're telling me that they are. Right. One of the biggest complaints that I make with a lot of writers right now is that oftentimes writers are telling you how to feel, telling you what these characters are, telling me this, telling me that. They should show me, whether it's through their actions, whether it's through their lack of action. That's the point of the behavior of these characters, right? I forgot what I was reading in particular. Oh, it was the Tynan's Batman run. Back before they revealed who the designer was, one of the things that I had harshly criticized about the run was that you're telling me to be afraid of the designer. You're telling me that I should feel this way. Show me why I should be afraid of the designer. And, reveal, we find out it is arguably his most menacing villain, which to me, telegraphed. That reveal was telegraphed. But I don't want to get too far from the topic. Fact of the matter is that in storytelling, sometimes we need to be shown these things. You can't just tell us to feel a certain way because it doesn't work. Unfortunately, it does work on some people. I have found some people that were like, "Oh, the designer seems crazy." I'm like, "What has he done? What has he physically done? They kidnapped the Riddler? Okay, cool." Like, so did pretty much half of Batman's rogues gallery at some point. So, it stands to mention that there is a sloppiness in trying to tell us way too much. And like you said, when you're backtracking on a soft system and you fill in that information, it ruins some of the intrigue, right? So I think you were right on you're right on the head of the nail there, Bill. Jace Millam also says, Knight's Burger fanboy is showing again. 3 words for you, brother. Real knows real. That's all I got to say on that. Let's see. Comic Quirks with Jimmy also says, "Yo, Professor Bill."
What's up, dude?
Okay, so everybody's kind of talking a little bit about the Eternals. I do kind of want to get into the last section of the main topic. It's what we want out of the DC universe moving forward. What do we think would be the optimal result, the optimal status quo post Dark Knight's Metal? And one of the ways that I had figured that we go over that is giving a couple of the kind of tent poles, the tentpole books, and defining those books with the creators, because I think that definitely gives a hint as to the sensibilities that are going to be coming along with those creators. And I know you're going to be kind of going off the top. Bill, but
Oh yeah, top of my
I'll,
head because I didn't plan.
it's all good, man. I did mine pretty quick. I tried to make mine pretty reasonable. Like I wasn't trying to pull somebody that is currently exclusive at Marvel, somebody that is currently doing like I tried to make them things that could happen, although I don't 100% obviously think that they're going to happen. Obviously, I couldn't start without bringing up Batman, DC's most consistent book in sales. And you had brought up novelists, and this novelist has also curtailed into comics successfully, might I add. And I'd love to see Brad Meltzer writing Batman. I love Brad Meltzer's work. I am in that body of people that love Identity Crisis unapologetically. I think he has built even more so his kind of noir thriller sensibility as he's continued to do novels. And I love his voice for Batman. You know, one of the important things is obviously characterization of these iconic characters. And I think that he would bring Batman into a really interesting direction. And I think that he's also high enough profile of a name that we might also be able to get someone like Jason Fabok on a little bit of art duties. Fabok has yet to do a Batman arc in the Batman book. He did Detective at the beginning of his career. He's doing Three Jokers with Jeff Johns. And obviously, you know, you would need a bigger name to get Fabok on a Batman book, but I feel like it would bring Batman into some places that we haven't seen in a while. We'd get dark, we'd get on the ground in Gotham City and in the sewers. And that's kind of what I want with Batman right now. I want a detective book that's going to make me feel like this guy who also tangles with the gods might also not walk out alive, right? Even though I know that's not the case, I think that Meltzer is the guy to convince me that that would be true. How do you feel about that pairing, Bill?
I don't have a problem with that. I think that he's shown that he knows the character, you know? And I think that's one of the most important probably the most important aspect to it. Not just your capability, but how much do you actually care about the character?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who can write really well. Yeah, cool. I don't think too many people are going to question, especially if you watch them when they were airing at the time, the Superman animated TV series and then the Batman animated series. Those were great. But there's also the Batman Beyond TV series that was around the same time. What was the most special? You watched that, right?
Yeah, of course. I grew up with him.
Awesome. What was the most important aspect of that TV show? I'll give you a hint. It was in the pilot
of Batman Beyond.
Yeah. What was that iconic scene that stuck with you and let you know why Batman is doing what he's doing?
Well, I think one part of it was definitely, and I don't think this is what you're going for, but one part of it that made it stick out to me was the kind of replication of origin, right? The fact that, but what made Batman Beyond stick out from all of those things is that he's totally different than Batman. He's totally different than Bruce. And it put Bruce in a role that, you know, especially in the animated series, he had proven to not be great at in the long run. You know, he wasn't a great guidance figure. So,
but he had Batman, or he had Bruce Wayne being his mentor at the same time too. And he was given his blessing and he had to earn that blessing. Why did Batman retire in the first place? You remember that scene in the very beginning?
Oh, yeah, that was heartbreaking. Yeah.
Right there. That's what I was going for. That scene right there where you see Batman fighting, but just getting old. Ow, my heart starting to give up, starting to give out. And then all of a sudden he just picks up the gun. And the guy's like, holy crap. And it broke your goddamn heart into pieces. And that's something that Zack Snyder will never in his life understand. He claims that he's so far beyond there. No, that's called going off the rails. One of the greatest Batman moments that has ever happened was that moment in that first episode of Batman Beyond, where he did pick up a gun and he almost used it because he would have died otherwise. And then he's like, that's it. I quit. It is probably the most iconic Batman moment ever. Batman beating up Superman with, you know, these different things that he's doing and whatever. Yeah. It's really cute. Did that define Batman? Did Frank Miller's run define Batman? No, it's like this is Batman at the end of his run. And here's a different take on Batman in the future. Why he chooses to retire. You know what I'm saying? all these different scenes with Sterling and Arpaio doing, Batman, with what's his name, KG Beast, and I'm going to lock you in a room and let you starve to death in here and things like that. I'm going to break my rule. All these different things about Batman's rule and so on and so forth. Like Michael Keaton was really good on it, whatnot, but like the machine guns on the front of the freaking, Batmobile and stuff like that. Like, dropping people to their death and things like that. I'm sorry, Ben Affleck, who could be a great Batman also, but did he have the writing there? I would have loved to see what the Batman would have been. I would have loved to see what that would have been. But do any of these guys actually have that moment? Do they understand what makes Batman? I only have one rule. Technically, it's two. I don't use guns and I don't kill. Maybe I don't kill with guns. I don't know what it is because that's soft. That's not hard. We were just talking about the difference between a soft world and a hard world. That's soft. I have one rule. What's that rule? Keep you guessing. But when he's about to break that rule, you'll know it and you'll feel it. And when you have that gave the justification for Batman to say, I quit. No, I don't need somebody else being Batman. Okay, fine. You've proven you could be Batman by stealing the damn thing. Okay, fine. I'll mentor you because you're going to screw up anyway. Okay, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to actually help you out and give you all my resources and everything. Like, holy crap. That is one of the greatest TV series that's ever come out because of that pilot episodes where they showed us from the beginning, from the word get in the get-go, that they understood Batman better than most of us even realized that we understood Batman. And if you can have that moment, if you can have that guy, that person who gets that, that's who belongs on Batman. That's who belongs on every single comic book out there. If they really get that character, what is that defining moment? What is that moment that's going to make you realize this person gets it, and I never realized how important this character was until this moment. So I don't have a name for you. I have an idea.
I thought you were going to drop me with some Paul Dini or something after that.
Nah, I don't have a name. I have a concept. That's what I have. I have an idea. And if somebody has that idea, that's who belongs on that book.
Yeah, no, I mean, you definitely spoke your piece very well, and I agree with the sentiment 100%. And I do think Meltzer gets that. I do think Meltzer would pick up on emotionally what drives Batman in that way and what provokes him to act. But Meltzer also has a fundamentally great understanding of how to plot something, how to use those events in a chain of one another to get you to be afraid, to get you to cry, to get you to laugh. Like, I mean, he convinced us that Deathstroke would beat the shit out of the Justice League. I don't like if you had said that before Identity Crisis, I don't think anybody would have agreed with you. Everybody would have been
right. Deathstroke jacket. Yeah, that was the greatest moment ever that everybody else has been trying to live up to.
And he fundamentally, again, just has such a firm grasp on the craft. I think he knows Batman. He proved it in Identity Crisis.
Really quick, wasn't that technically his Tower of Babel moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, before you could have spoken innumerable things about how maybe Deathstroke was only as competent because he was facing the Titans. But Meltzer put him in a position that gave him the spotlight he deserved. And when Batman already has the spotlight, imagine what he does with that. And again, his awareness of the craft, his proven understanding of how to voice Batman, both in his JLA run and in we just mentioned it, Identity Crisis, I think is a no-brainer. He's freaking Fabic, dude. Like, do I need to say any more? But knowing that Fabic does not stay on a book for very long, or if he does, he has to do it kind of in concentrated doses. As a secondary artist, I'd throw Steven Segovia on there. I'd like his art. I wish he'd be on Batman more. His style fits really well. He captures the kind of DC house style along with specifying it to make it feel right in Gotham City. So, yeah, that's kind of my Batman. Jace Millum proposes Jeff Lemire on Batman, and I'm not saying no. I would never say no to that. Jeff Lemire could write my boring ass life story and I'd read it. So yes. What do you feel about that, Bill?
I like Meltzer more. One of the main reasons why I like Meltzer, why you're turning him into Meltzer, is because a thought that I'm having is that he doesn't have anything to prove. Jeff Lemire might. Does he? I don't know, but he might has something to prove as far as Batman is concerned.
Mhm.
Brad Meltzer doesn't have anything to prove to anybody. Too many people are out there. Like when you have uh, Tom King and just anybody else who's out there who's not anybody, but too many other people out there with the Batman. It's like Batman's so important. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I've got to do something amazing, that's going to knock people's socks off. And it's like you don't necessarily have to do that. You
Mm.
just have to show us that you know who the character is. He's
Yeah,
got the largest laundry list of rogues out there. The best. Nobody's got a better rogues gallery than Batman. I mean, like the next two combined, you take Flash and Spider-Man and combine them, they still barely match up to what Batman really has, and the
agreed.
different kinds of levels it is, the different kinds of criminals that he has, the truly insane, the truly smart, the truly powerful, the ones who are always going to give him some kind of a run for his money. You know what I'm saying? He's got that. So you don't really have to go crazy. Every so often you could throw in a Professor Pig, what I'm saying, and just like, let's throw, let's mix it up a little bit. Oh crap.
Mhm.
What Tinian is doing right now with the gunsmith and people like that. Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Let's see this, basically like a bullseye character,
Mhm.
Meltzer doesn't have anything to prove. And that's one of the things I like about, the idea of Meltzer being on that book.
Yeah, and he's also versatile, right? Because along with Batman's extensive rogues gallery, for a loner, Batman has the largest cast of supporting characters in comics,
Yeah.
you know? So that's huge because one of the things that I felt like the Batman book has generally lacked is being in touch with parts of the Bat family. I love my Batman solo stuff. I think most of the greatest Batman stories of all time are solo Batman, but I'm ready to see a little bit more of the family integrated in some ways. And Meltzer has that versatility, not only in the types of stories that he's telling, but in his awareness of characterization. He did a one-page story in that weird ass Marvel 1000, the Marvel Comics 1000 thing. But but I read on, it was like one of those review things that one of the comic book sites put up, and I read his Spider-Man story. And Spider-Man is not a character that you would associate with Brad Meltzer at all. But in that one page, not only was he able to tell a brilliant story that comments on why that character is important, it goes totally outside what we would think his toolbox to be. And the fact that Batman is also in his toolbox, I think just speaks volumes to how great he would be, along with what you had just mentioned as well. And going further, Superman, and I already said it earlier, Robert Venditti on Superman. Robert Venditti is one of the most underrated writers in comics right now. He is a chameleon. He has not written a bad thing in my mind. He's written things I haven't loved, but nothing bad. And he's proven in small doses that he knows Superman. Even in this sort of ancillary, his Walmart Superman thing that he's doing now, whatever it is, you can tell it has to be watered down. But even with that, it's better than Bendis' Superman, a watered down, like minimal page count Superman story. So when given the opportunity to sit down, sink his teeth into the character, I think Bendis would nail it. He's nailed characters whose personality types are kind of all pieces of Superman. And he proves he knows how to write a cast, because I think that his supporting cast at the Daily Planet is also super important to get a hold on. It brings so much to that mythos. And you look at something like his Green Lantern Corps, he brilliantly balances those 4 Earth Green Lanterns as well as the rest of the supporting cast. I just feel like he'd do an excellent job. And I would love for Jorge Jimenez to draw Superman. He's done it in smaller doses. He's done it in Justice League. DC has proven that they're willing to shell out the money for top tier artists on Superman like Ivan Rice. And I would just love to get more than just a bite-sized piece of Superman with Jorge Jimenez's art. And him and Venditti, I can't help but think that they would cook up something really special.
Nah. Much like I said, how Frank Miller writing Daredevil was really just his audition to write Batman. I feel like everything that Venditti's been doing is just his audition to write Superman anyway. It's like, in his Green Lantern run, one of his biggest freaking villains who kept on showing up, especially towards the end, was Drew Zod, you know, and his family. Like he actually brought his family into it. One of the best moments in Green Lantern history, in my opinion. The whole idea, like, and as a former Army soldier, you know, infantryman, like that joke that he made, where it's like, you Army guys are always thinking about left, right, front, and back. You know what I'm saying? But when you're in the Air Force, you also have to think of top and bottom. And it's like, you know, that's just, I'm insulted, but no, that was awesome. That was good. I like that. I like that. So like that worked. And he had the fighter jet, like. Yeah, for a character who's more powerful than you, you have to be smarter than this character. You have to think what's outside of his wheelhouse. Yeah, I Drew Zod would know better than that, but whatever. Like, it was just such a great moment that I'm like, I can't hate this at all. You know, what do you call it? His Hawkman run. He's made one of the versions of Carter Hall a hawk, or excuse me, a Kryptonian. I mean, come on, man. This guy's clearly auditioning to write Superman his entire life.
Yeah. And the thing is there are 2 points that I wanted to make. Is one, again, that he is a chameleon. But aside from that, amongst all of the projects he's already worked on, he's shown all of these different pieces that, if brought together, would almost make for the perfect Superman. And, you know, Venditti, I think, I mean, I'm just beyond ready for people to see him in the capacity that he deserves, because he's awesome. He's so good. He's one of DC's best writers, in my opinion. And it saddens me that he hasn't been given the opportunity on a bigger stage to show that, right? Like, you're a Hawkman fan, so you see that. And you gave him the chance after Jeff Johns, which clearly by sales, a lot of people did not do. When Jeff Johns left that book, they skedaddled on out.
I have more eyes on my reviews of Hawkman than anybody else on YouTube. And it's still only at like 200 something views, which is,
it's sad.
I don't make money off of my Hawkman reviews. I just want more eyes on that book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's really good. And I can speak honestly, man. I was not a Hawkman guy. I wasn't. I knew the tangential information.
Most people aren't.
I knew, you know, like I said, all the tangential information about his reincarnation, how confusing his history was, who Carter Hall was, who Prince Khufu was. Case closed. You get into his book, and not only is it fun, it's so much fun. It builds on the mythos of the character while also making it accessible. And he's saying things. Venditti has such a great balance of craftsmanship in his writing that not only does he make it entertaining, he makes it thematic with something that he has to say about the characters or the world around them. And he knows how to blend those so well together. And the fact that he can make me, who didn't care about Hawkman, who only went to that book on the laurels of Robert Venditti's writing, I am more than pleased to now be a fan of Hawkman. So it speaks volumes, man. Venditti is incredible. And even Jace agrees. Venditti on Superman.
Fine.
But you know, I would say too, as a secondary artist, just in case, I'd like to see Liam Sharp on Superman. You know, I think he's continued to evolve as an artist. He's proven that on his Green Lantern book that he's versatile and he can shoot for so many different styles. And for the most part, I think accomplish a good majority of them. And if you're going to draw anybody like the big Dorito chip of a superhero that he tends to do, Superman's your guy. So I think as much as I'd prioritize Jorge Jimenez on art, I don't think Liam Sharp would be a bad idea either. So
yeah, he's definitely got the details for it. I don't know. I don't know, man. I feel like he's just way too detail oriented. And you don't have to be with Superman, you know?
I agree with you.
You know who I'm actually what role I'm more interested in is the inker on Superman would probably be like more important to me.
I might even pull somebody like Galapian, man. Capullo's inker. He's just fundamentally versatile. You know, normally Greg's art isn't super high detailed, and he knows when to pull it back. Evident in Last Night on Earth, he knows when to really go through it with a fine-tooth comb. So I definitely trust him. But I also think that Sharp, through his Green Lantern work, even though I haven't really been in love with this run, he really played around with so many different styles. and he's been pretty good at pretty much all of them. And
Mm-hmm.
he has a fundamentally great understanding of like the camera work that comes with being a comic book illustrator. So that
Was it Sharp who did the Wonder Woman Batman thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
more the art style I'm looking for rather than the Green Lantern. You know,
Yeah.
the Green Lantern thing.
Yeah, and I think he's capable. I mean, he's done it before, but I think he's capable to even hone that in more. I think he does art that is kind of specific to how he feels the character is. He's able to
I
shift
feel like
himself.
that's just kind of overkill on Superman, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know, that's just me.
to be fair, like I said, that's why my primary artist was Jimenez, and then as a
Who's already shown he can do it, yeah.
yeah, and then as a every once in a while, throw in some Sharp, spice it up. I think he could do it.
I'd rather Sharp be on like a cyborg book or a Man Thing book, you know?
Oh, I agree. I mean, the 7 books that I brought up, I thought were more like the tentpole books that pretty much always exist. So I think
And for the Justice League, of course.
yeah. And so we also have a second. Geek Fortress comments on your thing real quick. He goes, "Okay, I got to that part. He still loves you." Twitch his eye. Second Street Marvel just dropping a what's up and commenting on Hawkman being underrated. And if it wasn't for Comic Man Jake, he wouldn't even be reading it. Hawkman's a great book, dude. It's been really solid, and I'm glad that you got turned on to it. And I'm hoping you're turning more people onto it because it's arduous work. And a shout out to Tim Board at Hawk World, man. He works arduously to get eyes on that book. So I'm sure he would also be very pleased with you. So I'll definitely have to let him know that we shouted Hawkman out because he'd be very happy at that.
The thing with Tim is Tim already knows.
True. He does know all things Hawkman equated. Tevye Smoka also agrees with the Hawkman. Taylor Pector says Rafa Sandoval on Superman. Yeah, 100%. The only reason I didn't is because I have Rafa Sandoval somewhere else. So and when Jorge Jimenez like pops up as Superman, I couldn't not. And Rafa's style has that kind of same fluid tone to it. I couldn't have them as the two artists on Superman. I had to throw them somewhere else, but I don't disagree, dude. I love Rafa Sandoval, by the way. I love and bringing it back to Venditti, one of those guys that Venditti brought into DC, man, an absolute gem. Let's see here. Moving on into Tevye says, can we put Peter Tomasi on Superman? I mean, you could, and I wouldn't be mad at it, but
it's been there. I actually really like him on Detective right now.
I do too. And I another issue that I'm having with editorial not saying yes to the right people is that it's clear that they're pigeonholing Tomasi into a bunch of other stuff. And it pisses me off because Tomasi, like Venditti, is one of their most underappreciated writers, arguably one of their best. Like his detective, that first arc leading up to 1,000, brilliant. To me, one of the best things I have read from DC Comics over the last couple of years. So
did I tell you about his thing with Super Sons?
What about it?
When I talked to him the one time, we actually walked away from everything. Like, this guy is a truly amazing human being, and I was so heartbroken that I was able to walk down, like we were walking through the food court and everything, the two of us just hanging out and just talking. And it's one thing for people to not recognize me. Who the hell am I? But like, that's Peter J. Tomasi right there. And nobody recognized him. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, a guy who just shows up out of nowhere, Donnie Cates. Oh my God, it's Donnie Cates. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Donnie and I were talking, and people are looking at me like, you know Donnie Cates? I'm like, well, I interviewed him once. I mean, but like this is Peter J. Tomasi.
Yeah.
But he told me about how Daddio took him off of that Super Sons book. And he's like, just out of curiosity, why am I being taken off the Super Sons book? He's like, well, Bendis is coming on, and he has, I gave him authority over all things Superman. And he's like, so that means John also? And he's like, yeah. So he's like, so I don't understand what's going on. He's got something going on with John. He's like, well, in the future, he's got something going on with John. His big thing right now is, and this is, Mr. Tomasi told me this directly. He says, Daddio said that, that Bendis said, I've got no use for a Super Sons book, which is like the number one best book that DC was putting out at the time and prior and after for a long time is this book, and they just ended it. Even Adventures of the Super Sons wasn't as good as the regular Super Sons book.
Yeah.
And man, like that is heartbreaking to hear. You literally just said, "Oh, that's a very nice burrito you're eating." Yoink.
Yoink. Yep.
Also, "Oh, I see you have a wallet. No more burritos for you." Like you just took food and money out of another man's mouth and pocket like that. And then to see what he did with them, and he just basically reforms the Super Sons anyways. You know, saying in the Justice, or excuse me, in
Legion.
the Legion of Superheroes book, it's like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
You ended the best book DC had to do this. I'm sorry, this crap that you're doing right now, that is heartbreaking. That is heartbreaking to hear that he would do something like that. And I'm sure it's going to come off as mostly callous. I think it was more of the idea of, I'm sure you guys will figure out something else to do, but you gave me Superman and I've got all these ideas and I want to do this stuff. And it's like, but if you were paying attention to what was being done, maybe you would have recognized that wouldn't have been the thing to do. Maybe that was the wrong decision. Maybe you do recognize that.
And that's another issue that I was talking about before, where it's like those are the moments where editorial isn't letting the right people make calls, and they're pigeonholing somebody like Peter Tomasi into giving up something that he was not only good at, but people loved. People loved Superman. The biggest complaint I've seen, people who are generally fans of Bendis' Superman. I mean, they're wrong. They're fucking wrong. But I'm joking. But the fact of the matter is that even they can admit that what he did, how he butchered John Kent was a mistake. And that speaks volumes. Peter Tomasi said something very similar to me when I spoke. I make a habit to talk to him more than anybody else at cons, just because he's so
shows your intelligence.
Thanks. I try. That's where that college degree is going. But I tell him every time, man, every time I shake his hand, I'm like, Pete, man, DC does not know who the hell they have their hands on right now. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. And he said that to me way back when I first started my channel, when Bendis was still coming, back before we knew it was a threat. I had spoken to him. He was one of my earliest interviews before I had any idea what the hell I was doing. And one of the things we had talked about in private was just how he had no idea what was going on with Superman once they announced the whole Bendis thing, and how suddenly they ripped everything out from under him. You know why that last arc was not as good as the rest of his Superman run? Because it happened out of fucking nowhere. They told him, you're it. As of this issue, you're done. Like, not only do I think that's just wrong in general, when he's generating the best Superman run we've seen in about a decade, you don't do that. Like, that run, I was at the time, like when I got into comics, I was a teenager. I was one of those shitty teenagers that was like, fuck Superman, it's all about Batman. Little did I know how much of a little dick I was being. Because when I read Peter Tomasi's Superman Rebirth, I flipped the shit out of that script, man. That made me such a fan of Superman to where literally a week ago, I have an entire 2 and some change hour conversation about why Superman is important and why the world needs Superman. And that's him. He did that.
Not every writer has done amazing things like that. You know, the story of Metropolis, or not Metropolis, although that's one of the books John Byrne wrote. John Byrne made Superman very important back in like 86 with the Man of Steel book.
Yeah.
I mean, you've read it then.
Yes.
Yeah. It's literally, it was so good that it's the only thing that was kept from pre-crisis through post-crisis. And it, like, the story of Metropolis stayed that vision until Bendis came along.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So think about that. The final remnant of the pre-crisis universe was that stuff that stuck around until Bendis said, "Oh, hey, I'm here." And he was just like mush on all of that. And it's like, that to me was just like, even though I was still enjoying Bendis's run at the time, and I was still very curious where he was going to go with this, and I was reading between the lines, like that Rogal Zar stuff was clearly MRSA. The thing that almost took his life, that kept coming back inexplicably, and nobody can understand, what do I do about this? That was, to me, that was so glaring. Rolgal Zar is MRSA for him. So this enemy that was fighting Superman, saying, was like, I see it and I'm like, I am really interested in seeing him telling his story on this. But yeah, once it got to the conclusion of everything, I was like, I'm going to opt out now. I'm going to opt out now. It's just like, too many things were changed. Not only did I not like the ending or how the ending was even presented, at least off the so-called payoff, I don't feel that there was a payoff. But on top of that, I just don't feel that any of it was worth it, was worth what he's done, what he's changed,
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. Jace Millum, as an artist for Superman, brought up Nicola Scott. That was my first instinct, but I put her somewhere else. She's here. She's on this list. I could not put Nicola Scott on anything. And he also brings up Joe Quinones. That's an interesting pick that I didn't think of.
I didn't think of that. That's actually, you know what? I'm going to take that as my number one.
Okay.
Take that.
Okay. We will. Rounding out the Trinity on Wonder Woman. This is where I put a writer that I think could do anything, and I would be very happy, and he would do a great job. But I wanted to give him a character that he has not gotten to take a really big stab at, and it's Jeff Johns. I think Jeff Johns would do a kick-ass Wonder Woman run. I mean, you read something like Darkseid War and what he does with Wonder Woman and Grail, and how can you not? He is the chameleon of comics. He can pretty much write anything. He's just Jeff, the continuity god Johns. I feel like he would do such a great job integrating all of these different schools of Wonder Woman between Rucka, Perez, Jimenez, and even probably Brian Azzarello, because Jeff Johns that damn good that he'd make all these seemingly contradictory things work well together, and absolutely kill it. And for an artist, it took me a while because there were so many times where I had other artists on this list in this spot, and I thought I'd like to see David Marquez on a Wonder Woman book. I think David Marquez would do a pretty bang up job.
What's something he's drawn recently?
He did the beginning of that Batman Superman Williamson book. He did Civil War II. Listen, the story wasn't. I mean, frankly, I didn't.
I'm even going by the art. Like, it was okay.
I didn't like the story for either of those books, but there's also something about Jeff Johns.
This is the artist. I'm thinking about the art. I'm keeping my mind where it is. Yeah, and the art wasn't great.
It's Wonder Woman, I think, is a really difficult pick, but I wanted to put somebody that has a lot of potential, that Jeff Johns, just as a master of craft, as somebody who writes full script and is very deliberate. I think that he could channel that well through Marquez, because his aesthetic style really matches, I think, finally with Wonder Woman. Excuse me. And again, Jeff Johns is able to kind of take those artists who might not be as sure and give them just such a good bang up script, because again, Jeff Johns, nobody talks about how he was Dick Donner's assistant, right? He studied film. Jeff Johns is a very visual thinker, and he includes all of that visual prowess into his scripts. And I think Marquez would do a bang up job. And admittedly, there were other artists kind of in this list that I would have put there, but I didn't want to double dip. And I think Wonder Woman is kind of a difficult character to throw an artist onto, because you don't want it to be too barbarian warrior and you don't want it to be too peace and love. There's a fundamental balance. But Marquez is kind of neutral tonally, and I think he'd be able to do a pretty good job. Do you have a good suggestion for Wonder Woman, either writer, artist, or both?
For writer, first off, I want to point out what I believe is a logical fallacy in your Jeff Johns thing. One does not simply assign Jeff Johns to do something. So I think a little more respect is in order. Okay. One does not simply take creative genius and say, I want you to channel your, he'd be like, what?
I now have a rightful addendum. I begged for Jeff Johns to do Wonder Woman.
There we go. Yeah, Johns could do it. Absolutely, he could do it. I don't know. Maybe ask Miss Simone to come back if she's interested. She might want to just go out on that high note. I don't know. But I think that more importantly than just the writer is the editor for here. And I wonder, Mr. Perez has retired from art, but could he be convinced to come in as like a part-time editor for Wonder Woman specifically?
Like a consultant, you think?
Yeah, consultant, editor, anything along those lines. He'd definitely be able to help out with the art. It wouldn't hurt that he knows the story also. Maybe like Marv Wolfman, has he been kicking a lot of butt in his writing as of late?
Mm.
Because maybe bring him back as a senior editor, for that and for Titans and for a whole bunch of other books, along those lines. Maybe that would help also. Because if you did have that top-down leadership, you know what I'm saying? That idea of, I'm not just going to tell you what to do. I'm going to mentor you in what you're going to do. So this way you could practically, and I wouldn't suggest pulling anybody off the streets, but you could practically pull somebody off the streets and turn them into one of the greatest writers ever. Because I think that more than just the writer and the artist of Wonder Woman that's putting too much on them, it's the idea of who's in charge of editing that book, who's in charge of actually, leading. Like, sorry, I'm just going to bring down one more figure. Like, who's going to make these kinds of stories? You know what I'm saying? That
Mm.
not just written, but visually, they're going to just do these things that are going to make you take a step back and say, holy crap, you know?
Yeah.
And mind you, when they talk about the holy trinity of comic books, it does have to be recognized, that, in my opinion, at the very least, that Batman, Superman definitely deserve to be there. Wonder Woman is kind of forced.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Wonder Woman's not the first female super character that came out. Hawkwoman was created years before Wonder Woman.
Hmm.
Phantoma is actually the first super, and she wasn't even in Marvel Comics. You know what I'm saying? She was the first female superhero, and she was one of those all-powerful Mary Sue types. But that's what Fletcher Fletcher Hanks. That's what Fletcher Hanks would do. You know what I'm saying? It's the idea of, like, she's very super important. Gloria Steinem got involved in it in the feminist movement and things like that. Like, Wonder Woman was more powerful when she wasn't turned into the spy and taking her powers away and things like that. It showed that people were listening. It showed that some of the right people were listening. Wonder Woman was seen as a feminist character, So, like, William Moulton Morrison, showing up and like just like his ideas and things like this. Wonder Woman is more of a concept. Wonder Woman almost seems like she should be a cosmic entity in some regards. I don't want her to be, but I almost feel like she should be written in that way. You know what I'm saying? And she should be one of those soft characters. Because when you try and write the rules for her, when you remove her bracelet, she's super powerful. It's like I didn't like that. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? The idea that she's one of the things I did like about her story, Wonder Woman Wonder Woman is bulletproof, but she can't direct where those bullets go. And she loves love. There's the main thing about Wonder Woman that Jeff Johns, I think, really pushed more than anything. Wonder Woman loves the world and everybody so much that even though Superman would just bing, 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 oh no, I'm sorry you got hurt. Wonder Woman would be like, I'm making sure nobody gets hurt. These
Mm.
bullets can't hurt me, but I need to know exactly where I'm going to make sure they go into the ground in an angle they're not going to hurt people and things like that. I also kind of like the idea that she herself, she's strong against all sorts of different attacks, but not against piercing. So
Mm.
bullets and arrows could hurt her. That's why she uses either one of those actually work for me. You know what I'm saying? But like this sort of mythology behind her, who can actually do these sort of mythologies
Yeah.
around her? That's what I'm more interested in. So for me, it's not so much as what the individual writer wants to do, but the inspiration that they are going to take from. And that's what I think I'm more interested in seeing.
I agree. I agree. And I think that's part of what makes John so capable, is because he's such he's such a scholar of the mythology of these characters that I think he would just do such a great job. And I know Taylor's a little bit worried here in the chat, saying that John's has struggled with Wonder Woman because he thinks that it's the hardest member of the Trinity to write. I think she is the hardest member of the Trinity to write. But just because I think Jeff Johns had a hard time doesn't equate to any sort of deficit in how well he wrote her. I've always felt
I
very
don't know.
confident.
I wouldn't want to write Wonder Woman. There's a lot of characters who I would love to write for. And as much as I want to fill my head up and think that, oh, I'd be this amazing, right? I don't know if I'd be an amazing, right? I might suck at it, you know what I'm saying? But one character who I know I would not want to touch is Wonder Woman, because there is that level of reverence for what she represents more than anything else. And I don't think that I have what it takes to bring that out, to really, focus on that. I think that I would do a horrible job.
Huh. I mean, speaking personally, I actually do have a Wonder Woman pitch in my head that spawns off of a Justice League run, actually, that focuses a little bit more on her.
Mhm.
And I think you can get her mythology, and I think you can get the world around her. Personally, and what I think is the most nuanced that is difficult to come by is her characterization and her voicing, because she's been led into so many different directions that I think even some of them that are contradicting, I think work. I like Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman. I like Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman. Are they kind of contradictory to one another in the nature of the character? Yes. Do I like them both? Yes. And so this is where I would, again, really like to lean on Johns, because he's so good at melding things and and maybe now that it's been some time, maybe having all of these other different iterations for Johns to play on, maybe it just makes this character more in his wheelhouse. He's a little bit more aged now as well. He's written more of the DC universe. I would certainly give him a jab. So aside from the fact that he has such he preserves and loves the continuity and the history, he fundamentally, I think, proves that he gets this character, and I think that his understanding of this character couldn't have done anything but matured over time. So I think Johns would do a great job. And to be fair, like I said, you could throw Johns pretty much anywhere, and I would be happy. I would be more than happy. So, I just thought that it was time that Wonder Woman got another really high-profile writer that would give her the spotlight she deserves, because to a degree, Bill, I agree that Wonder Woman, it feels like they continue to tell us that she's a member of the Trinity rather than backing it up in these stories. And she deserves to get the stories that back up her status as a Trinity member. I mean, Harley Quinn is more popular than Wonder Woman. Do I like Harley Quinn more than Wonder Woman? Absolutely not.
Yeah, same.
Can I admit that this is the unfortunate case? Yeah. And it's because Wonder Woman really is not being put into the hands of the creators that can make her as appealing as she possibly can be. And the movie has proven that she can be appealing, that people of varying perspectives, of varying, even like genders, this isn't one of those very female specific things. We can all come together and appreciate Wonder Woman. And if anybody's going to unlock that, it's Johns to me. So my next book is The Flash. And, I wanted to be very deliberate in my Flash pick, because I don't think many people have a clue how to write Barry Allen. And I think it's shown. I like the beginning of Williamson's run, probably the first 20 something issues. To me, it really fell apart with Flash War and Beyond. I wasn't a fan. And this writer is somebody that I'm pulling from Marvel, that is very well known at Marvel, but is not exclusive, and is actually doing a very small DC work coming up soon. And it's Chip Zdarsky. I think Zdarsky would do a pretty damn good job with Barry. I think he's proven he's versatile. He used to just be the funny guy, and then he goes on to Daredevil and is doing some pretty incredible things. He did a solid job with Invaders. Zdarsky, I think, would breathe a lot of life into the Flash mythos, and in a way that I don't think we've seen since Jeff Johns brought Barry back in Rebirth. So, where I'm a little bit more like, ideally, I'd actually like to bring in a kind of no-name writer who is known for their science fiction work in comics. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but I do know that at bare minimum, Zdarsky's versatility will cover that. I think that he'll write something that is exploratory of Barry Allen's character, because I don't think that that's something we've had. One of the biggest issues I had with Williamson, even when I liked it, is that it felt like we were doing the same thing with Barry Allen all the time. And while I can see why everybody's favorite Flash is Wally, and I might be compelled to say that because Wally is a more interesting character, my Flash in the comics has always been Barry. So I would like to see him done justice. And I would like to prove all of the fans wrong who hate Barry Allen because he took that spotlight back from Wally. And I think if anybody's going to do it, it's Zdarsky. And this is where I'd actually put Rafa Sandoval. I know he's working on it with Williamson, but this is 100% my bias. I stopped reading Williamson's Flash before Rafa Sandoval got in the book, and I know it's brilliant, at least aesthetically, and I want that, and I feel like his style works well with Zdarsky. So I know, you got a little bit of a face when I first mentioned Zdarsky. So I'm curious, Bill, what do you think?
No, what is Zdarsky doing at DC?
At DC, he's doing he's actually on art for one of the short stories in the Batman 1027 book.
That makes more sense because he was hired it was only like a year and a half ago, maybe a year or whatever, that he got an exclusive writing contract from DC. So he's probably flexing a little bit and showing, oh, what are you talking about? You hired me exclusively as a writer for Marvel. So you didn't say anything about my art. So I think maybe that's what's happening there. Yeah, no, I don't think that I don't even know that he likes oh, sorry, did you say what he's doing at DC? What he's drawing?
Yeah. He's doing one of those features in the Detective 1027.
Oh, he's just gonna be doing one of the features. Okay, cool. No, I feel like I don't know. Me talking to Zdarsky fairly a lot because he's practically just down the street from me.
Huh.
He's in Toronto. I'm in Mississauga. I'm part of the greater Toronto area. So what do you call it? He's a Marvel guy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just who he is. I asked him like, what's the book, the one book you'd want to write more than anything else in all the, and I couldn't even finish it, but he's like Fantastic Four. I'm like, that's so odd. So many people don't say that. Like, you don't have any interest in doing anything in DC. He's like, not really, not compared to like writing Fantastic Four. For me, that would be the dream, gig. I'm like, okay, wow. And we talked extensively. Every single character he talked about was that. In fact, when he talked about DC comics, he only talked about Batman. He's like, the thing I want to write about Batman is how he's basically just this 1%er guy who goes around punching poor people in the face.
Yikes.
He was the first person who brought that up, and people got pissed when I would bring it up. But even then, like that's what people are talking about that a lot now. It's like that's when you really break down Batman, no matter how you're going to look at it. He's this guy who could make all these changes, with his money, richest guy in the world pretty much besides Lex, right? And he could absolutely make changes, fundamental changes. Instead, he just, runs around, punches poor people in the face and whatnot. So that tells me right there that he does not have a feel for Batman the way that we want to have that feel for Batman. He's not a DC guy. So no, I don't think that he would do a good job writing for DC. That's just not who he is.
I mean, I have faith enough in his ability as a versatile writer. And I think that when you get onto a creative project, the end result is not always what you think it's going to be. So I can't help but feel like his ability as a writer kind of grants him the ability, like say for some reason he were to take the project, right? For some off reason, I can't help but think it would be one of those scenarios where ideas just start coming to him and coming to him and coming to him, and that he would work out something great. I mean,
you gotta like what you're doing. I could really bring this back to, the economics of the 8-hour, 40-hour work week. You know what I'm saying? How many of those hours are we actually productive? You know what I'm saying? The employers just want to feel like, if we're there longer, we'll do more. That's not really the way that it works. You know what I'm saying? Unless you're in like manufacturing, then sure. You know what I'm saying? If you're actually in like, an assembly line or something like that, but how many of those jobs do we really have in the States anymore, right? I think we actually have more of those jobs here in Canada than America, and they're mostly American companies. So those are leaving. So I really look at it as like if you work in an office environment, 3 hours per day is the most that you're really, producing work. The other hours are just, whatever. So likewise, I think that, in the same vein, Zdarsky he'd be trying to put together some things. He'd be putting, and it's like he'd have some ideas, but if your heart's just not in it, and I don't think that his heart is in it at all.
I think you make a valid point. And I knew he was more of a Marvel guy, but I didn't know he was that much swayed in that direction. So that would definitely change it. I was just kind of making my choice based off of just his ability as a writer, his versatility, how he brings. I just feel like he has a fundamental, and it might just be because he's so passionate about Marvel that he brings out the best in the characters.
And
But
about those characters that he's writing. Like when
yeah,
he was writing Harold the Duck, I mean, he knows the character.
mhm.
He knew the character beforehand. I mean, writing for Daredevil, he could tell you about Daredevil.
Oh
Like
yeah,
you talk to this guy, he could tell you about Daredevil. I don't
oh yeah.
know that he could tell us about, some of these other DC characters. I don't think he could really do that. So
That's fair.
passion
And
is one thing, but you have to have that background knowledge also.
I think you make a very good point, and that would definitely make me rethink my choice for the Flash. Um, yeah, but like I said, it was all kind of fundamentally backed up just by his ability as a writer.
No, it's
Um,
all good.
the,
These writers and these artists, I think, better than I do in general. Saying like you're bringing up names. I'm just like, shoot, what's the latest thing that person has written? What's the latest person that person has drawn? I can't
I,
remember.
it's honestly fundamentally because I'm a wannabe writer, so I'm trying to study them as much as possible.
There
You
you
know,
go.
but the Geek Fortress is peacing out, just saying it's a pleasure, gentlemen, heading out now. Said you guys are awesome, amazing convo. Thank you, man. It's always good to see you in the chat. So
Later, Lewis. And my first public congratulations. He sent me the text message and he's like, "You're the first person who knows. I just made 1,000 subs." It's like,
yep,
psh, but the thing is, I knew before you did that you're worth it. So whatever.
100% worth it. Yeah, Lewis is worth a subscriber count hundreds of times for sure. So thanks for watching and thank you for the high praise, my brother. Let's see. Jace does not like Zdarsky at all, which I think is interesting. And he says that he has no faith in Zdarsky's ability whatsoever as a writer. That's where I think you're in the minority, my friend, where I can concede in this specific instance to Bill that maybe Zdarsky isn't the right guy for the Flash. I will certainly make the argument that Zdarsky is one of the best guys working in Big Two comics today. And I say that as arguably as one of the most nitpicky, most pretentious comic book fans on the internet. Zdarsky is damn good. And where I'm even kind of pulling apart parts of Frank Miller's early Daredevil, I'm not doing that to Zdarsky. And I think that may speak volumes. I don't know, Bill. I don't know if you have a follow-up comment on that.
Just that I'm going the exact opposite direction. That he's one of the most underrated and most overlooked writers in Marvel or in comics today. I feel like this guy has just not gotten that credit, saying that he deserves. He knows these histories, he knows these lores. He's like Tom Brevoort. Saying you go in a trivia match with this guy, he's going to pull it out. And you could, he's one of those guys. He's Canadian. Saying, which means that he's not going to wear his emotions on his sleeve. He's a funny guy, but you look at when he talks and when he's always cracking a joke and he's really quick with a joke. But when you see the kinds of jokes he does, they're more of that subtle joke, the ironic jokes and things like that. He's not going to come out like an Eddie Murphy or a Dave Chappelle and just be like, let me tell you something, say that's how you and I talk, He's Canadian. They're very reserved, so
unless you are Comic Boom a couple Coronas in.
Okay, I'm going to give you that. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's definitely, his demeanor is it's kind of like this hilarious dry humor, man, but he knows how to put it into the books. He's shown it. And that's, I respectfully just disagree with you, Jace. I have very much become a big fan of Zdarsky, and he's proven his versatility in my eyes.
And not just that, just the care that he has for those characters.
Oh yeah.
And he's not trying to prove anything with his writing. He's showing you a different side that this is one of those guys. I'm going to put him in the same, realm as Tomasi, even though he doesn't have as much on his resume as Tomasi does as far as comic books are concerned. Here's just this guy that I think that we're going to go back one of these days and be like, how is this guy such an underappreciated gem? How did we not recognize, what this guy was bringing to the table? I feel like that's Zdarsky.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Taylor brings up an interesting name for the Flash and says that Rucka on Flash, putting an emphasis on the CSI aspect of Barry, slow down the pace of the Flash book, ironic, and also make the Rogues the main villain. Rucka's again one of those guys that could do most anything, but I like the CSI angle for sure. He's proven that tonally he can do a little bit lighter. He's proven that he could get down and dirty, and he's proven that he can find a very happy medium. So, with me kind of backing down from my Zdarsky hill on Flash, I might be tempted to say Rucka. I think that's an interesting pick for Barry Allen. What do you think, Bill?
I think that I'm off the Barry Allen train. I think that I have such high respect for not just Barry Allen, but also for Jeff Johns. Remember, Jeff Johns didn't mean for the New 52 to happen.
True.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was something that was another, decision where it's like, hey, let's make that the crisis event. He's like, I didn't mean for this to be the crisis event. No. This is going to be the crisis event. Write that. He's like, I wish I had more power so I could tell you to go F yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like just such a shame. That's what happens when you tell somebody to write something as opposed to ask them, what would you like to write? I think that Barry Allen coming back, that moment with Superman where he just dusted Superman.
So
Like I was just like, that's what I'm talking about. And mind you, that first race between Flash and Superman was Jim Shooter. He wrote that, that was him. Even with that, like John's coming up and pulling that moment, it's like that was solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at the end of Flashpoint, he should have gone back into the Speed Force. I think that he could have been that old man Ben, or that, like if you're going to talk about the hero's journey, I think that he could have been that Obi-Wan type, father figure to Wally at this point, and that's where Barry should have stayed.
I like
it's
that.
Like, sure, bring him back, but let him stay dead. Saying let him, like the Speed Force isn't the same without him there. Hey, the Black Death came to get him. I'm saying that the Black Racer came to get, the Black Racer came to get him and whatnot. Say that he just went willingly. Say that, turn around and say, like, this is me with, coming up with stupid ideas on the moment. Say that Flash had to do what he had to do. He had something he had to do. And then he chases down the Black Racer and says, in order for the universe to be the way that it needs to be, and maybe make that your New 52 event. In order for the New 52, or in order for the universe to be what it needs to be, I need to go back. So you maybe gave up on me, but no, I need to be where I am. And the idea that he actively went towards death, unlike what anybody else has done in the DC universe before, allows him to be that Force ghost kind of figure where he can, once in a while, when Wally needs to, he could just choose to go into the Speed Force and talk, and Barry can still say all these things that he says today that in Williamson's run, you're the fastest man alive. Saying you're better, you have the potential to be better than I ever was, and to be that father figure. That's what we need in the Flash books, in my opinion.
I like that take a lot. One thing I might even, just to spice up the whole rationale for Barry to do it, I might do something along the lines of the Black Racer coming after Wally, because this Wally technically isn't supposed to exist in this timeline, and Barry chases the Black Racer in order to keep him off of Wally, and it becomes a paternal sacrifice that he made. And
if you're going to do that today, sure. I'm saying, like, back in the Johns run, if he would have done that, we could absolutely apply that today. The idea to me is, like, Barry Allen is supposed to be great. He is supposed to be something else. And you know what? I hated the idea that Jeff Johns isn't perfect. I hated the idea that Superman wasn't the figure of hope. How is Superman not the figure of hope? How is Barry Allen the figure of hope? You know what I'm saying? So when did that ever happen? So like, I don't even think he's a close second. Shazam would be a better figure of hope than freaking Barry Allen. You know what I'm saying?
To me, Barry is always, Lewis is awesome.
If he wants to be the figure of hope, how about hope in the future generations?
To me, Barry has always kind of been the figure for honor. Barry's always just felt like an honorable character. I mean, it goes back to his quote unquote death in Crisis. He sacrifices himself to the multiverse. There's an honor, he has done things to the detriment of his own well-being for Wally, for Iris. So I agree. I do agree that that weird shifting of that prestige of being the hope of the DC universe to Barry might not have been the best way to handle it. But it doesn't make Barry any less valuable as a character. I don't think it's just recontextualizing what makes him important. But moving on from Flash, because we've also spent quite a while on Flash. My Green Lantern is Peter Tomasi, and I know he's done Green Lantern Corps, but there are a couple reasons why I wanted to put him on there. One, he proved himself in Green Lantern Corps. Two, Green Lantern generally seems to be a space where DC editorial does not get up your ass. You're usually kind of allowed to go do stuff because it's off in space. And I think that if DC's editorial continues to be the mess that it has been, you go let Tomasi play out in space and potentially do a Green Lantern run that rivals the likes of Jeff Johns and Robert Venditti. I think he would do an awesome job. He's proven his ability to not only get down to the fundamental core of his protagonists, but he would do so well writing an ensemble. And again, it's just giving somebody of his caliber the chance to design his own stage, because he's busy waiting for DC editorial to make those design choices for him, and it pisses me off. So I think Tomasi would do a killer job. And on art, this artist was so hard not to put on Superman. I was so close to putting him on Superman. And through a book that he's doing right now, I would 100% love to see him on Green Lantern, and it's Jamal Campbell. Jamal Campbell is phenomenal. He is so good. And I mean, I can't speak highly enough about his art style. It captures the iconicism of these comic book titans. It feels so human and down to earth in some ways. And the way he breaks down a page, his panel layouts are so dynamic. He's doing such a kick-ass job in Far Sector right now. And I just can't help but think that Peter Tomasi and Jamal Campbell wouldn't do a phenomenal job on that book.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. There's so many Green Lanterns, and Johns, I think, has done more to really, well, Johns and Venditti, but I'm going to say Johns more than anybody else has done more to really distinguish, the differences between these guys. They all deserve their own books, and they deserve more. There's Simon Baz, you know what I'm saying? He deserves more. For crying out loud, what's the girl's name?
Jessica Cruz.
Thank you, Jessica Cruz. She deserves her own book. So you can't just have all these different Green Lantern books necessarily, but maybe lead with one, and I don't know, like Hal Jordan is always going to be my Green Lantern. I've loved Hal Jordan. I've loved just almost every single thing about him, even the parallax stuff. I'm not going to argue about that. You know what I'm saying? I wish that it would have been done better. Like the Death of Superman thing. It's like he seemed to be okay with it, and now he's not okay with it. The destruction of Ghost City. If they would have planned in advance a little bit better, it would have just felt better. But everything about it, I just think that all of it was great. Yeah. I don't know where you go with the Green Lantern, because there are there's more Green Lanterns than there are Flashes. You know what I'm saying? And maybe they're not all in the forefront, but I don't know. Like, what do you do with the Green Lantern? You need to have Hal Jordan, I think, but maybe it's time to just put Hal in that backseat role for a moment.
The thing I like about Tomasi and his versatility is that I feel like it could be, you could focus on a different Green Lantern in different arcs, and either, put somebody as a supporting character or have them off following up on something. And Tomasi is cognizant enough of a writer to maybe do something like, maybe to get the thing started, Hal's the protagonist of the first arc. Things get dire. He has to continue. We go in on to another character and another character and another character. And all of these things might kind of have plot threads leading to a greater threat where he does something that focuses on the cast. Tomasi is versatile enough that, and he has such an understanding of the continuity and the characters, that I feel like I trust him to make the decision as to what direction the Green Lanterns are going in and how to handle them. So, to me, he could do pretty much anything. It could be with Hal. Hal's also my favorite Green Lantern. It could be without Hal. It could be, again, a Green Lantern of the Week type thing. I don't care. I just trust Tomasi to do it right. And I know that whether or not, he does something grand and epic, he'll do stories that are honest to the characters and honest to their history and who they are. So that's why Tomasi. And again, Jamal Campbell's just fucking Jamal Campbell. He's incredible. He's so good. So I just couldn't pass up an opportunity to put those two.
He's local also. I see him all the time.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Well, tell him a random kid on the internet absolutely loves his work. And I wanted to go back to a live chat that came up like an hour ago. And I'm sorry it took us this long to get to the Green Lantern, but Comic Quirks with Jimmy wants David F. Walker on John Stewart Green Lantern because he's done such a good job with Bendis on Naomi and seems like he would be a perfect fit. I don't disagree with that. I'm fine with that 100%. Again, this was just me loving Tomasi, wanting to put him in a space where he could thrive, where nobody's going to really tell him what to do. But I think having a David F. Walker, John Stewart book would be great, man. And sorry it took me so long to get to you.
No worries. I was actually going to come back to this quote also, which is, where some people see coincidence, I see providence. The Morpheus speech from The Matrix. What do you call it? Having Tomasi on the book is one thing. But building off of what you said, yeah, have a book. Have we had a book called Green Lanterns, plural?
Yeah, it was the DC Rebirth title with Baz and Jessica Cruz under
Oh yeah, that's right.
Sam.
But maybe do
something.
Humphreys?
Yes.
There we go. What if they did like volume 2 of the Green Lanterns?
I'm
You
game.
know what I'm saying? And then you have Tomasi, not just one of the writers, but the editor, so to speak. I know it's not a great idea to edit yourself. At least having the assistant editor, you know what I'm saying, on it also. But he writes some of the stories. But he's also in charge, or at least he's the figurehead, like, okay, I need somebody else to write this, that, and the other thing. Because based on what Comics Work said, having David F. Walker come up and do a Far Sector book in this, or arc in this book, I think would be great. And just have them all be individual stories, but with Tomasi in charge of them all, so he's actually bringing them together also.
I like that. He's kind of curating.
Yeah, there we go. There's the word for it.
The Green Lantern Corps. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea a lot. And
all of this could lead up to an event,
I'm not saying no. I have a big ass Green Lantern tattoo on my leg. He's my second favorite DC character, and I love the mythos. So that's a great idea. I love all of the gears that are in motion right now.
Yeah, Hal is actually my second favorite DC character also. Yeah, so that works.
Yeah, that's dope. I love the idea. Have you
him and Aquaman, both of them kind of. Yeah, but anyway, go on.
Tevye wants to know why not have Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris get married and have kids.
It'd be a great way to retire him.
I would. Yeah, I was gonna say if you want Hal Jordan to keep being Green Lantern, no, I don't think it works. And Tevye, I know you're super hot on the whole Jonathan Kent thing, and it works very well for Superman and Lois. Having Damian, I think, works well for Batman at this point in his career. Having Hal Jordan with a kid absolutely does not. The fact that Hal Jordan keeps screwing up his relationship with Carol Ferris is kind of indicative of who he is as a person. He's the great uncle to his brother's kids, but it's because he doesn't have to be there all the time.
He's a great helicopter parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shows up, the cool aunt, so to speak.
Yes. So Hal is not one of those characters that I would put in a paternal role again, unless you want to retire him. He's the fly guy, you know what I mean? And if you're going to make him Green Lantern, he's the guy making all of the rash decisions to get to the ends. He is the one to set out on the means to accomplish whatever ends he needs to do. And as a parent, I don't think Hal Jordan can be that guy anymore. So that's why, like Bill said, unless you want to retire him, I wouldn't say no. I don't think, like I said, it works really well for Superman. Not so much.
Let's get stupid. Let's get stupid with it. What if he does retire? What if he does get married? You know what I'm saying? But they're trying to have kids, but he doesn't really want to have kids. He's not so sure how he wants to do this. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. Maybe he even at one point acts like his sperm count is too low. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? Just whatever. Why? Because he actually just really likes being that, cool aunt to his nephew.
Yeah.
And his nephew is a huge worshipper of him, and he's basically the young Hal. what if we did have, I mean, we've already got enough. Why not have one more Green Lantern? What if it's actually his nephew?
I like that
Now,
infinitely more.
we suddenly have a reason to bring Hal out of retirement to train and mentor him. See, I'm really big on the whole, like, being in the martial arts my whole life, like I feel like men, just men as a whole, you have a father figure or you don't. Sometimes, the father isn't in the household, whatever. But even if you have a father figure, you always need that second father figure. You
Mm.
always need that second male figure in your life to guide you, whether it's your priest or it's your in my case, it was my senseis, you know what I'm saying? There's always that, so who has the different, he's not looking to protect you. He's looking to push you out there and, do these things. So you need that polarizing force in your
Every
life.
everybody needs a Kilowog.
Boom, right there. So maybe he's just like, listen, the guy who trained me, like right there, the guy who trained me, saying in the Green Lantern Corps, meaning, Kilowog, whatever. And eventually you have that arc, but like, why not retire Hal?
Mm.
And the only reason why he comes, because he willed in his own Green Lantern ring. That's him. That's his willpower.
That
He
was
doesn't
dope.
need your stupid Owen battery at this point.
Yeah.
Like the perfect way to, it's like, I'm retiring. I don't have to, turn in my ring because he could bring that thing back at any moment. But maybe his nephew does wind up getting that ring. So maybe, now he doesn't want to have kids because, he's too busy working with, this kid and whatnot and helping him out. And then Carol's like, well, I want a kid, on my own. And oh, it turns out you lied on your, your sperm count test and things like that. And just, there's the at-home drama. And he can still have that drama, which is a key factor in Hal Jordan's life, is his drama that he has with Carol. Like, I think so much of that works. So yeah, I'm going with Tevia's. I'm building on it. I'm saying make that into a story.
Yeah, I like more the nephew angle. I mean, Hal having his own kids though.
No, I don't want. There's a million reasons why he's not gonna have a kid. He should not have kids. He's got a
Yeah.
kid. It's his nephew. Boom,
Yeah,
done.
I like that way more because I also think it leaves him a little bit more unrestrained to be the kind of cool but like aggressive uncle when it comes to training his nephew.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like that idea a lot. I had something else I was going to say about that, but I don't quite remember.
You could still put it in the same story that I liked with yours, where it's a collaboration book. And the one thing, the grounding feature for all of these characters, that everybody comes back to talk with Hal, because he is the guy. No matter how much you try and put John Stewart in that leadership role, Hal's the guy.
Everybody looks up to him. Everybody looks up to him. John has the utmost respect for him. I mean, shit. He had words for Batman many times over about respecting Hal. So
Fists.
Yes.
Knocked his ass out. Like, you stay down.
That was Tevye also says, what about Grant Morrison? To be honest with you, brother, I think that would totally defeat the idea of this thought exercise.
Yeah.
1, 2, I liked where Grant Morrison's Green Lantern started. I'm not liking where it's going so far. So for both of those reasons, as the executives on Shark Tank say, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm more. I'm not, Rob Thomas or anything like that. A Roy Thomas, but I try to consider myself something of an amateur comic book historian. I like to look back in the days and see where these stories were going, where the writers got their inspirations from, what they did, their environment, how they worked and collabed with each other and things like that. I love seeing all these things. I love looking back on these stories. And I feel that with Morrison, he's more about being in the now. You know what I'm saying, than anything else. I feel like this guy, like what he's doing with the Green Lantern, like it's Green Lantern, the Green Lantern. Then we go into the, the other story that he did, the 3 issues of, for crying out loud.
Stars.
Thank you. You know what I'm saying? And then he goes into volume 2 of the Green Lantern. It's like, I see what you did there, but you didn't have to do that. And now 10 years from now, 5 years from now, people are going to be like, oh, I want to follow this book. It's a shame that it ended here. Oh, but there's a second volume that he wrote. Oh, let me check that out. And be like, well, I don't understand how this happened because they're going to miss those 3 issues from the different book. That doesn't make sense to do that. You could make it the same volume and just cross out Green Lantern and write, because how many times have we seen that before? Like when the villains took over the villains book, it's like you cross out Teen Titans and you put Trigon over top of it. Like you could do that instead. I think that was just such a poor execution of a way to do that for future readers.
Yeah, I think it was certainly an odd choice to make. And it also doesn't hurt to mention that, like, for a couple issues of the first season of Green Lantern, he was a Dark Star. He did become a Dark Star in the Green
Dark
Lantern.
Star anyway.
Yeah,
Faking it, but still. So the idea of, like, if we're talking about doing a collaboration book, Morrison is my last choice for a collab book.
yeah, and I agree. Morrison is again, aside from the fact that the thought exercise is trying to get different people on these books, Morrison is just not been my guy on Green Lantern, and I say that with all due respect because Morrison's one of my favorite writers in comics. But yeah, I agree with Bill. Morrison is not the guy for me. Taylor says that, as a lot of people say jokingly, Hal's first and only love will be the ring, and that's why nothing quite works with Carol. You're 100% right, my man. And then again, that's why I think he's good at being the helicopter dad to his nephew, and why he could never really have a kid and be a good father. He can be a good uncle. But I think that, like, when comic book characters are horrible dads, you just don't like them that much. Like, I don't know, for me, without spilling too much of the beans, I have a shit dad. And I've always kind of resented when people make Batman this really absentee father for Damian, especially when he had a parental role model like Alfred. You know what I mean? So I think that making Hal Jordan a dad, and then if you were to, the only logical thing to do would be making him a bad dad, and then it would just make him unlikable.
Yeah.
If you want to get that sort of paternal role for Hal, I say we follow Bill's suggestion, do the uncle slash trainer mentality and move from there. But I agree with what Taylor says, 100% right.
Yeah, every single reason in the world to not have a kid, every trope that you need to bring into it. It's like he lies about his sperm count, he lies about this, he lies about that, whatever. Maybe at one point, she has a miscarriage. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, we hate when they do. No. Have her have the miscarriage. Have that happen. And then when he's spending more time, or maybe that's a reason for him to not be spending time with his nephew. You know what I'm saying? And then he starts going off and doing some crazy stuff. Have him be the dad figure that John, that under Tomasi, John had, with Superman, with John Kent's father. But, like, have it go back and forth, because it's not actually his father. He's just that second father figure who he respects so much. Have her, at one point do the and this could be like, years down the road. Have her at one point do the Godfather 2 moment where she has an abortion.
That'd be interesting. I think, building on that, the miscarriage, I think, should be the thing that kind of awakens the more paternal instincts in Hal, that makes him a better uncle to his nephew. Because to me, he'd be scared out of his mind. And then the moment when he thinks it's going to happen, that's when it settles. And he's like, maybe I can do this whole father thing, miscarriage.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
years later, then he finds out that there was another pregnancy and that she aborted it without telling him or something, because she didn't believe in him as a father. I mean, that just brings drama into this situation. So yeah, I think that would be an interesting route for Hal Jordan, for sure. And it would show a lot of development in the character as well. So,
exactly. You're keeping the status quo while giving a reason why you're keeping the status quo, because you're acting like you're trying to change the status quo. Everybody's going to think, well, obviously he's going to have a kid at some point because they're trying so hard to have a kid. So, and then, oops, as it turns out.
And there are so many reasons why you could, I mean, first of all, you can just make the simple kind of in continuity explanation for her not being able to carry, because she's probably endured a ridiculous amount of trauma as a Star Sapphire. That alien technology could have interfered with her biology and her capability of rearing a child. So yeah, it's all in the cards. And moving forward, unless you had any more to say about Green Lantern, I want to get into a Teen Titans run. And Teen Titans, for me, and for most people, fundamentally has to be about the dynamics of the cast of the characters. The superhero thing, while important, comes secondary to that. And I believe that James Tynion would do a good job of writing Teen Titans. He's proven that he can do ensemble casts in Detective, in Justice League Dark. He is a big fan of a lot of like the Young Justice era of comics. He said multiple times that Young Justice was his in, which, for all intents and purposes, is another variation of Teen Titans. I think he'd do a great job. And he could play with whatever Robin he wants. Although I'd like to continue seeing Damian because I am very partial to Damian. And I think on art, you get somebody like Dan Mora. I think Dan Mora's art would prove so well. He did. I'm sure you read the Joker 10th anniversary.
No, I didn't.
Or the 80th anniversary. Okay.
Yeah, that one. No, I didn't. I'm just so tired of these anniversary issues.
I don't blame you. Have you read
the last one I read was the Robin one?
Okay.
And I didn't do the Green Lantern one. I didn't do the Joker one.
Have you read Once and Future? Kieran Gillen book.
Oh, yeah. I read the first couple of issues. Yes.
Yeah. I think Dan Mora.
You're taking me out of the DC wheelhouse. I'm like, Once and Future in DC? Wait, what? Yes.
But yeah, I think he has that really youthful aesthetic to his art with a lot of energy to it. I think it would bring a lot to Teen Titans. Otherwise, if you don't get him, you get somebody like Robson Rocha. He did quite a bit of Kelly Sue Connis Aquaman. He did a quick spot on Teen Titans for like an issue. Both of those artists would work really well. Robson is a little bit more detail oriented, but also carries with him that youthful energy that works really, really well. So yeah, Tynan and either Robson Rocha or Dan Mora, I think, would kill a Teen Titans run.
What about Stefan Sajic on art?
I mean, Stefan Sajic, his art seems too mature for Teen Titans. Like and that's not me like poking at his art because he's fantastic, but
he's done that Harley Quinn stuff and the sexy stuff and whatnot, but he's also done the early part of Abbott's Aquaman recently.
Yeah, I read.
Oh yeah.
I read that and it was phenomenal.
Very diverse in his art.
For sure. But there's the thing about that Aquaman run was that he really kind of caters to, it's not feudal, but that royal aspect and of Aquaman,
Because that's what the book called for.
Right, of course. And I'm not saying it doesn't, but and I think he would certainly provide like a youthful energy, but there's something about guys like Rocha and Mora that just capture that for me. That almost juvenility. And also, with all due respect to Sajic, his art kind of progressively decreases in quality as he continues to do issues in a row. As much as I love his work. So I would like somebody who can be as consistent as possible on that monthly schedule. And Rocha and Mora have proven that. Again, like you look at those early issues of his stint on Aquaman, they were fucking gorgeous, man. Every page felt like a cover and it was beautiful. But over time, it just kind of, to me, started decreasing in quality. And
I didn't see that.
In no sense of the word was it bad. But when you set me up here, when we start here and I'm loving it and we end up somewhere around here, it's just kind of not as enjoyable of an experience, So while I wouldn't say no, I think I would still prefer a Robson Rocha or a Dan Mora. But how do you feel about Tynan writing a Titans book?
Yeah, I'd be okay with it. I don't think he would do bad. Again, I'm still going to stick with my thing from earlier with the Wonder Woman thing. If Perez and Wolfman, were involved, either of them or both, God forbid, in some way, that would be one of the books that they would definitely be editing. So, yeah, I think that the spirit would, it would be there for the book in and of itself. And I'd still go with the mentor thing also with them. I think that they would need a mentor, but I think that keeping Damian Wayne as the leader of the Titans, but we haven't really done a lot with Tim Drake as of late, have we? So what a great leader or a great role model, I think, mentor.
In the same way that too, when he was in Jeff Johns' Teen Titans, they had Cyborg and Beast Boy and Starfire as figures. And I think to your to complement your idea there, I think it would work so well because Tim and Damian, I think out of most of the Bat family, probably have the rockiest relationship, especially because of Damian's narcissism.
Yeah,
but I think that would be an interesting way to not only add a dynamic drama to the group, but it would give an opportunity to see those characters develop their relationship together. So, yeah, I think that would be really cool.
It would play even better because, of course, Nightwing, the original Robin for the Titans, and they're the original Robin. Period. You know what I'm saying? The idea that he would show up once in a while, and even though they definitely get along better, Damian and Nightwing. I think it's the idea that he would show up and he'd be even cooler with him just to try and, point out, see him I at least like.
Yeah.
And seeing, Nightwing like, Dick Grayson just be like, wait, we're friends now? What happened? Oh, I see what's going on.
It came through. There was something really great about Tynan's Robin story in the anniversary book, where like at the end of it, it's all this advice, and then Damian's like, you're just kind of the other Robin, right? Like he would tease him, but there's a fundamental respect, because at the end of that run, he goes, you're effing Robin, man. Like you decide what the hell you want to do. But what happens when Tim's decisions are things that have to overstep Damian's position as the Titans leader? And that's where I think you'd get a little bit of static, a little bit of friction.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It'd be fun.
Plus, you can out sneak, Damian can out sneak Tim. You're not going to outsmart him.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like outsmart as, a compound or a hyphenated word, but actually I'm looking at it as a hyphenated word as opposed to a compound word. You're not going to be smarter than him. He's got the tech background. No. If you try and do infiltration, he's going to know. And he's going to do counter infiltration, and Damian's not even going to realize it. Just little things like that. It's like, you're in my wheelhouse now.
Yeah.
That's what I'd really be looking for.
Yeah.
Tim's what do you call it? If Tim does mess up with something with technology, just saying something, having Damian say something stupid like, boy, I guess Cyborg was in charge of the tech when you were just a little something like that. The little nitpicks that he could do. You could almost replace the Super Sons aspect by having these two with it, except Damian really does not respect him. But then that one time when he does, it's a big deal. It's that feels moment,
Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's that contrast in the character dynamics there, and that playing off of that would be a lot of fun. So yeah, I think that'd be a hell of a run, especially because I think Tynion did capture that really well in his anthology story too. So it'd play off well. And the last book in my pitch had to be Justice League. But to me, one thing that I haven't loved about the Justice League, but pre-Scott Snyder, and by that I mean mostly like Brian Hitch, is that it felt really inconsequential. And to me, Justice League should always be big indications on what's going on in the DC universe. So I would actually make Justice League either a bi-monthly or like a quarterly book, have it be bigger, let it do big things. Or you could do something where you do a couple of issues, like an arc, give it a break, let the DC universe feel the impact of this story, and then come back to it. To me, because you also, in my opinion, in a shared continuity, can't be doing something huge all the time. You gotta have the implications of those big events or those big arcs rest. You need to give them time to actually impact the universe and to see how that plays out. And based on this writer's ability to pretty much master ensemble writing, plotting, characterization of characters individually and dynamically together, Tom Taylor, bro. Taylor would kill. Tom Taylor is another one of those writers that I could have pretty much put him on any one of those books. But with Justice League, you need a very, very specific tool set to be able to do. And he has proven it in a number of books, but also in Injustice. Whether or not we're talking about the tone, because we're going for two very different things in the mainline Justice League versus Injustice. But fundamentally, he understood how these characters would react in that very extreme situation. He understood how to bounce those dynamics off of one another. And even though the Injustice universe in some ways is so vastly different from the one that we know in Prime, there were still so many things that were so true to the character. Like when Damian kills Dick and Batman is like, and they have that falling out, and he's like, And Damon's like, why can't you forgive me? I'm your son. He goes, no, you murdered my son.
Yeah.
Those are the small things like that. And the dynamics between them. And again, Tom Taylor just hits it from every angle. And this is where I put Nicholas Scott. They worked together on Earth 2, I believe, in the New 52, but they both matured. Nicholas Scott, man, it was so hard not to put her on Superman, but it's like, why would I put her on Superman when I could have her draw the entire DC universe? And in tandem with somebody like Tom Taylor, man, I think they would knock it out of the park.
Okay, I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction, but a lot like with the Green Lantern run, which I was making up on the spot. I'm kind of going to be making up this on the spot too. What's the heart of the DC of the Justice League?
The heart?
Who is the heart, I should say? I think that we're going to agree with each other on this.
I mean, I would say Superman, but I'm interested in what you're going to say.
I'm going to say Martian Manhunter.
I think post Scott Snyder's run, yeah, I would agree. I
would say even before.
Well,
I'd say with a lot of things, because Batman and Superman get into fights with each other all the time. When Martian Manhunter's not there, you have the I can't remember which book it was, but when I remember there was the one moment where Superman where they were basically trying to fire Batman, and Wonder Woman and Superman were there, and they were like, what do you think about bringing this guy in? What do you think about bringing this one in? Hey, what do you think about having Hawkman on the team as like a tank? Like he's a heck of a tank, right? And he's just like, oh yeah, but I think that his attitude is too much. He's like, you of all people would say this, and then that was the thing where they're just like, you know what? We were really trying to see what we were going to do, and this is pretty much just cinching it. We don't need you on the team anymore. And things like, I forget which book that was. I think it was a Justice League book, but whatever it was, I remember that scene so vividly. And it was like, all these guys are constantly always disagreeing with each other. And the person who's always trying to bring each other together because he can feel and know what they're thinking is John Johns, whatever. Anyway, everybody's always got an opinion on how he's written or how his name is supposed to be, but nobody can agree. But I figure have Taylor on the book 100%. Have it almost be like stories that Martian Manhunter's telling, not like an anthology,
right?
Because I don't think that's necessarily what we need. Although some can feel like that once in a while. But Justice League is more than just Justice League of America. There's the Justice Society. There's Justice League Europe, Justice League International. So if you're going to have a compilation book, that's also a really good book, I think, to have, where John Johns is basically in charge of, all these guys, because he's the one who's always up on the watchtower. He's the one who's always responsible for this stuff, because I know they always try to play Superman as the last, Kryptonian. Like there are more Kryptonians than there are humans at some point, saying, but there really is only one Martian. Like he solidifies that aspect of Superman way better than Superman does in the modern day. So have him, be in charge of it, and have him in charge, like there has to be, because the Justice League is huge. How can you only have 7, right? So yeah, have a Justice League, but also have a Justice League West, like they did West Coast Avengers, have a Justice League Europe, have a Justice League International, saying this is a great way to bring back the Justice League from New Superman and stuff like that. It's a great way to have that going on again. The Justice League China, I forget what it was called. That might have been what it was called, but
yeah, what it was called.
Right, like have all of these different Justice Leagues together, and then you want to do the anthology type thing. Have John's talking about one story of the Justice Society of America from back in the day, and things like that. And this way, Tom Taylor's in charge of all of it. And you could have Nicholas Scott writing the Justice League East, or Justice League, proper book, whatever. Have the Justice League West book, where it's like, how come you're not called the Justice League East? How come you're just the Justice League? We're the ancillary. What's up with that? We have just as much stuff going on here in Coast City as you do. Whatever. Have all these different, dialogues, but you can have multiple artists, because team books are not easy to draw.
Yeah.
It's one thing to write them, but drawing all those, and Perez will be the first person to tell you, I hate drawing team books.
But I wouldn't pull that away from the writing either, because writing ensemble books is crazy hard, because not only are you trying to individuate each of these characters, you have to focus on their dynamics in sort of groupings as a whole, bouncing
That's the
off of
thing. No, you really don't. Because if you've already got a Superman book and Superman's on this team, his dynamic stuff is there. You already know who Superman is, and that's what's going on. Batman, Wonder Woman, all these characters are on there. But when you have some of these other characters, like if you don't have a Cyborg book, but Cyborg's on the team, that's who you can focus on. And you can focus on some of the other teams that don't have, the individual stuff. This way you don't have to worry too much about the collab stuff and, what's happening in this book and that book, which is taking a lot of pressure off of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that I think that the Justice League could serve as it originally intended and give face time to the characters that don't always get it and put them into one book. But again, my argument is really just making the point that, you need a special person to write an ensemble. Like I think it's just as difficult to write an ensemble as it is to draw an ensemble.
Have you been reading Suicide Squad?
Yeah, Suicide Squad's good.
He's not only taking well-known characters, he created brand new characters, and he's giving life to each one of them. Slowly.
I agree. Right. But I think that regardless, that's no small task. Like writing an ensemble book in general is just no small task. Like I said, if Justice League is that, and Justice League is that what it was meant to be when the Justice League was first invented, spotlighting all of these other characters, that's cool. Tom Taylor will kill it, and I'll read the shit out of that. And I don't mind taking a breather away from the Trinity and the Justice League as much and giving these other characters room to play. But again, the only thing I'm saying here is like, I wouldn't shortchange how valuable Tom Taylor's ability to write an ensemble is when comparing it to how difficult it is to draw an ensemble. I think they're very separate tasks, but both very difficult. And it's proven, I think, in Snyder's Justice League. Snyder's a great writer. Has Snyder captured the cast of characters? I don't think so at all. I think he maybe knows how to write half of his Justice League characters. And other ones I think are just not good at all.
I think he was just doing too much. I don't know that that's the greatest example. I think that he was just tackling too much.
Well, I mean, even on the most basic level, the way he writes characters through the dialogue, I hated the way he wrote Barry Allen. Like I hated it.
Of course, because look at everything. It's like we have to hurry up and finish up this arc, and then, or this stuff, and then all these different things are happening. Like each issue felt like 4 different arcs.
Right,
were happening at the same time.
I don't think that affects something as small as dialogue. Like there was at no point where I ever felt he mischaracterized Superman. I didn't like what he was always doing with Superman, but something as basic as proving your understanding of the character through the way they're speaking is something that is fundamentally important. It goes unnoticed all the time. It's one of those kind of blind arts to storytelling, but it's something that, again, I think is very specific to being able to write an ensemble cast that I think Scott Snyder failed at, that I think Tom Taylor would absolutely murder. Like he would do a fantastic job. Like you said, he's doing it in Suicide Squad. Tevye Smolka in the chat brings up Deceased, how well he's doing with that. So he proves he can write ensembles. So Taylor would be interesting.
You know what? Boom. Tevye just proved my point. He's when you've got Deceased, it's like, there's this story with these characters and this story with the villains and this story with these other characters. Sorry, he's already proved it. Sorry. Tevye just proved my point. Tom Taylor can write all these different Justice League, teams in a Justice League book, but in order to catch up with the art, it's like, hey man, I need you to do. He's going to do these 6 issues for this arc. I need you to draw these. Hey, he's also got these 6 issues for the Justice League Europe team. So I need you to start drawing these. Boom, done. And he's got plenty of time, to get all these done.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like I said, Tom Taylor could do pretty much anything with the Justice League, and I think it'd be good. Yeah. But I mean, I think it just goes to show, though, amongst all this conversation, how right Tom Taylor is for anything Justice League related. And whatever you end up doing, as long as you throw Nicola Scott in there, it would look brilliant.
Dude, I think Tom Taylor could do my taxes, and the IRS agent would shed a tear. Like, this is the most beautiful story I've ever seen.
He's so good. I'm this close to putting him on Superman. I've put him on Superman in a number of other conversations. But man, like that, what set him apart and what made me say Taylor on Justice League was his uncanny ability to do ensemble books.
Yeah.
Because it's a skill that not every great writer has, and it's very, very important. And especially if they go your route and do all of these different avenues of Justice League, then you're writing, dozens of different characters, and you have to differentiate them from one another without getting too hammy or leaning into extremes. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I think that would totally work. Tom Taylor, take my money, write Justice League, please. Tevia he says, can we retcon Adam Glass Teen Titans and put Tom Taylor Super Sons? I don't know why we need to retcon Adam Glass's Teen Titans to get Tom Taylor Super Sons. I don't
know what that's about, man. And Tomasi, I'm sorry, Tomasi.
Yeah. Either one of those guys, I'd be happy on Super Sons, but I think Tomasi does have proprietary rights to Super Sons.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But I don't think doing Super Sons means you can't have Adam Glass's Teen Titans. I actually quite like Adam Glass's Teen Titans because I feel like it's a breath of fresh air. As much as I love doing classic things with classic characters and remaining true to their roots, the only way these characters stay around and keep their intrigue is by pushing them in new directions while maintaining certain things. And I feel like Adam Glass has done a pretty good job. I like his cast of characters that he's playing with because we're getting guys like Damian. We're giving, we're not a responsibility, but we're giving Wallace West a place to be. We're finally getting a little bit of Emiko Queen, and then we have all of these new characters. I like Adam Glass's Teen Titans. I mean, and again, I don't know why you have to retcon Adam Glass's Teen Titans to get, either a Tom Taylor or a Peter Tomasi Super Sons. I don't think those are mutually exclusive. So, those are kind of my 7 tentpole books that I think would be an interesting redefinition of the DC universe. All of the writers I think that I named were people that I think are simultaneously conscientious of these characters' mythologies and of their histories and of their place in the universe, while also being talented enough to move them into new directions without disrespecting any of those things. And I think ultimately, it seems like Bill and I have a fairly general consensus on what we want out of our DC universe post death metal, right? We want them to utilize their characters well, and that means all of their characters. That not only do I feel like they're mishandling who they do have on screen, on panel. I do agree 100% with your assessment, Bill, in that there are so many other great characters that we're just not getting to spend time with, and there's absolutely no reason not to. So, just kind of in closing and in summation of everything, Bill, DC Universe, they say, Bill, you are our new editor-in-chief. AT&T will not pull your hair. What is your DC Universe kind of in a general statement about coming out of Dark Knight's death metal?
Justice League is the head book. You could have a couple other, several other books, and DC wants to keep the number of their books limited, but they still like the idea of doing miniseries or maxi series, as they call them. Have those books actually stem out of what happens in Justice League, saying, we want Aquaman to have a 6-issue arc, and we want, I don't know, whatever, somebody else in the DC universe, Hawk and Dove, to have a 12-issue arc, because these guys have a story for it. Sure. Taylor, this is what we want to do. Do you think you could, eke that in? Sure. Bang, 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 bang. A couple things happen in this and the next issue, and then they leave the team because so-and-so, and that tells everybody, hey, go read this arc because this is what it's going to be about in general. And then the character can come back afterwards, and just the Justice League really should be the big thing. I know Rocky has multiple times said, and I can agree with him, you can tell the state of the DC universe based on the Superman book. Sure, but I think that the Justice League should be the book where the most focus is put on. As long as you have that, then every other story that's out there, you've got continuity. And it should be so much easier with DC since they only do it in 5-year arcs, basically. So it should be so easy to keep that together. So
Yeah,
thing.
I agree. I think that while I also agree that the Justice League should kind of be the cornerstone of the universe, I also think DC shouldn't be afraid at and it makes me think more about your suggestion at going through all of these different avenues of Justice Leagues, all these different pairings, because I actually kind of want time for the people that are on the namesake books to just do their thing and be unaffected by all of these grander things. And while I love me a great Justice League story where the Trinity is on full display, I think I'm also ready for a moment where Batman can do his thing, Superman can do his thing, Wonder Woman can do her thing, while also having a great Justice League book. So I do kind of want to have a return to character oriented stories. I want to let them play in their space and I want to enjoy them. And as a contrast, maybe every once in a while we get to that point where you have to call in the Trinity as part of this big universe spanning, arc. But these characters deserve time to show people why they're important, why we love them, and why they've been around for almost a freaking century, man. And
Mm.
and adding on to my kind of addendum here, I would honestly also in respect to what Bill had mentioned prior, I would also probably roll out a series of like mini and maxi series with lesser known characters and let writers redefine them for the modern age. We talked about guys like King. You put them on those very specific character oriented books without a lot of really intensely predicated history, because it's very clear that King likes to build his own sandbox. He doesn't like to play in somebody else's sandbox. But you do that with a series of books. Maybe we get a question book with Jeff Lemire in continuity instead of, in Black Label. But ultimately, let's return to letting the readers know and the people who might potentially get into comics why these characters are important. Shine them let's shine spotlights on them individually before we suddenly squeeze them all together into something super combustible, because while that's cool, it deprives these characters of their individuality to me sometimes. So, if we can make anything out, I guess it's Dark Knight Nation and Professor Bill for DC editorial. If it were a voting process, I would hope that the viewers would vote for us. So there's that. But yeah, I think we could pretty much close out the show here, man. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's joining us live for all of their I know
3 hours.
this is honestly the longest one I've had since you were last on the show.
Oh, jeez. All right.
Um,
I hope that means it was filled with good stuff.
Oh, dude, it's packed with good stuff. So if you guys are joining us in late, make sure you guys go check back the rest of the video because it really was a fun conversation. And if you are watching live, I do want to thank you guys for adding your thoughts and opinions. It really does help to keep this conversation going. And of course, man, Bill, it's always a freaking pleasure having you on, my man. You add so much to the conversation, a different perspective, very much from my own. And I appreciate getting to bounce ideas off of you, man. So thanks for taking the time.
Likewise.
But Bill, do you have what do you got coming out in the near future to let the folks at home know about?
Just reviews, and I'm trying to do a bunch of spotlights on stories and characters explained for characters that somehow aren't known as much. Like case in point, the Conan ones. I just put out Thulsa Doom and Kull the Conqueror, which are 2 characters that most people don't know about. I'm also going to be doing a Thothamon and a Conan one to try and get more people to see those. I want to continue my Iron Man stuff so that people could see some of the old Iron Man stories and some of his, crew. And I don't know, maybe a couple other things, mostly stuff in Marvel, but,
Cool.
I think that's more of my wheelhouse. But I was also thinking about doing some of the cause and especially the effects of the Tower of Babel, because so much came out of there that most people don't realize the only reason why this happened was because of the Tower of Babel story.
That's awesome. That's really cool. It definitely piques my interest immediately because all of those kind of niche characters are being a little bit newer of a reader out of my purview. So that's something I'll definitely be checking out. So if you guys, for some reason, aren't already, it'd be statistically kind of improbable if you're already here. But make sure you guys go check out Bill. Link in the description below to check out his channel as well as his Twitter. But if you guys end up wanting to stick around with me, feel free to leave a like down below if you enjoyed the conversation, and subscribe to the channel down below. We're kind of inching towards 400 subs, which is a very cool, small little thing, but we're getting there. And regarding stuff that I've had coming out, my Donny Cates Thor reviews have been fairly successful. So I've interviewed 1 through 4 in a package, and issue 5 most recently. And I will be reviewing DC's Dead Planet #1 very, very soon. So stay on the lookout for that.
DC's what?
Deceased Dead Planet #1.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah, and always come back to the channel for great Let's Talk Comics conversations with awesome community members like Bill. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and this is going to be Professor Bill and Dark Knight Nation signing out of another great episode of Let's Talk Comics.